The sea rolled in long, patient breaths beneath the cliffs of Dragonstone, the slow pulse of the narrow sea echoing through chambers of black stone. Dawn's first light seeped through slit windows, much as rumors seeped through the castle's halls. Soft, unassuming, yet promising fire beneath its hush. In the queen's solar, candles guttered against the encroaching gray, their flames trembling like watchmen who sensed relief but dared not look away. Daenerys Stormborn had not slept. A single pearl of wax slipped down a taper and struck the iron dish with a hiss that broke the stillness. She stood at the balcony's edge, golden hair unbound and stirred by the sea breeze, wearing neither crown nor armor, but a simple gown of charcoal silk that shivered around her ankles. Behind her, pages dared only whisper. News of ravens, count of grain, the mathematics of survival in a realm still mending from ice and blood. Yet their queen heard another tally altogether. A faint scratch beneath her ribs that counted each breath Drogon took in the courtyard below. He lay coiled between smoking braziers, a mountain of night-scaled muscle flecked with the embers of his own exhalations. The morning chill made his breath bloom red. Every pulse of his great crimson throat stirred memories of Meereen and Astapor, of blackened chains and charred harpies. Now his wing, vast as a merchant ship's sail, wrapped around Rhaegal where the green dragon slept, and the rhythm of their shared respiration was the hearth of the new world Daenerys meant to build. Jon Snow watched from the far doorway, cloak drawn tight, the chill of the passageway clinging to him like ghosts of the wall. He had not slept either. Too much had shifted in a single turning of the moon. Truths of blood, names carried in secret, loyalties fraying under the weight of banners once thought steadfast. Somewhere in the depth of the keep, the northern lords muttered of vows broken and thrones claimed. Yet Jon's mind held only two images: silver gold hair illuminated by torchlight, and the red eye of a dragon that had regarded him with uncertain curiosity the night before. He cleared his throat softly. "Your Grace." The address tasted odd now, suspended between courtesy and intimacy. She turned, the light catching a softness at the corners of her mouth that few had seen since Essos. No crown, he noted, but the consideration in her eyes was regal enough. "You rise before the sun," she said, voice low so as not to wake the tumult still sleeping in the keep. "Does the north stir so early?" "In the north," Jon replied, "the living keep watch while the dead remember." A hint of the old solemn humor ghosted across his face, fading as he approached the balcony rail. Sea air tangled briefly with the scent of dragon smoke. For a heartbeat, he felt as though caught between two eras, the frigid breath of ghosts at Hardhome and the blistering wind of fire above the field of fire reborn. Daenerys tilted her head toward the courtyard. "He knows you now." She spoke of Drogon, yet her gaze held Jon's. "He sniffed the Stark in you perhaps. Or the Targaryen. I cannot say which he respects more." Jon let out a thin plume of breath. "Respect is earned, not scented on the wind." She studied him for a long moment, as though mapping each scar on his face. Then she said, almost too quietly for the waves to overhear, "Do you trust me, Jon?" He did not answer at once. Trust, he had learned, was a blade that cut both holder and held. Yet the ache of loss, the child looking to a father who never returned, the friend gutted by treachery and black cloaks, the warm body of a lover gone cold in snow, pushed him toward a precipice where he could see only forward. Forward was her, and the dragons, and the broken realm that might heal if the wound was seared, shut with flame. "Ay," he said at last, voice hoarse. "I do." She stepped closer until a hair's breadth lay between them. "Then hear the decision I reached before dawn." She said, the slightest tremor in her tone. "The realm will bend to peace or burn in another war of roses and lions. I will not see another child starve in Flea Bottom, another father weep over a pyre of the innocent. If fire is required to guard the living, let it be guided by two hearts, not one. You once told me the North forgives little but values vows kept above all. So I offer a vow." Jon hardly breathed. "What vow?" "That my dragon's strength be shared, bonded to the blood of ice and fire together. Drogon will answer to you as he does to me." The words fell heavy, not a request but a promise etched in obsidian. "When we wed, the realm will see that our rule is not a conqueror's yoke, but a covenant. The two-headed dragon reborn." The tide's murmur fell away. Somewhere, a gull cried into the hush that followed. Jon's pulse hammered in his ears with the memory of Drogon's roar above the ruins of the Golden Company. "No man has ridden another's dragon since the doom," he whispered. "Then it is time the world remembered," said Daenerys. "Time it learned that the last dragon has two riders." He swallowed, throat suddenly dry as the Dothraki sea. To sit astride fire itself, to feel the strength of living flame beneath him, was to straddle legend and madness. Yet hidden in her words was another fire. They would wed. Not for banners, not for council tables stacked with parchments, but to bind strength and mercy in rough northern tongue and high Valyrian verse. He saw at once the fear in her eyes, fragile as spun glass, behind the steel of command. She was offering a piece of her own soul. "I would be unworthy of the gift," he began. But she silenced him with a touch. Light as ash on snow, upon his wrist. "You are Aegon Targaryen, sixth of his name," she said. "Blood of my blood, and a Stark forged in cold truth. Worthiness is not given, it is proven. Prove it when you rise with him into the dawn." He looked out at the courtyard where Drogon stirred, reptilian eye glinting crimson through plumes of steam. In that gaze Jon sensed a challenge older than Winterfell's weirwoods. "Are you hunter or hunted? Fire or fuel?" The dragon's pupil narrowed to a sliver that mirrored the sword of morning above the sea. "Then let me begin," he muttered, turning toward the spiral stair without waiting for fear to calcify. His boots rang on the stone like war drums. Below, the courtyard smelled of scorched iron and salt. Blacksmiths had dragged their forges aside to give the beast space, yet still Drogon's tail coiled among anvils like a river of armor. Jon approached slowly, each step a measured breath. Palms bare and open. Daenerys descended behind him, silent as a vow, unbroken. Rhaegal shifted, sensing her. But Drogon's focus remained on Jon. Smoke streamed from his nostrils, wreathing the courtyard in shifting shadows. The ground vibrated with each seismic beat of the dragon's heart. Jon halted barely an arm's length from those dagger-length teeth. He remembered ghosts of earlier terrors. The arrow-thick tail pressed against Blackwater Rush's sky. The molten gouts that swallowed scorpions whole. Yet he saw also the childlike curiosity in Drogon's lateral blink, the flicker of recognition from the pit fights of Meereen, when the dragon had spared a man who stood unflinching before him. Courage is a language dragons understand, Tyrion had once mused. But here courage alone might not suffice. Here the beast demanded honesty, a soul stripped down to ember and ash. He knelt, one knee to the cobblestone, as a knight might bend before a new king, though this king was scale and storm. Slowly, he set Longclaw aside, blade scraping stone as it left his hip. With both gauntleted hands, he unclasped the wolf-pinned cloak, letting the direwolf fall to the earth. No houses, no sigils, only the man remained. Drogon's head lowered until sulphurous heat kissed Jon's cheeks, singeing the short black hairs at his temples. The dragon inhaled, drawing the scent of blood, of cold nights under a torn black cloak, of crypt dust and direwolf fur. Jon shut his eyes, offering memory instead of muscle. The first time he died, the gasp that yanked him from darkness, the night he plunged a dagger through the heart of the woman he loved, the moment he bent the knee before the mother of dragons. A life marked by impossible choices, each one carved deeper than Valyrian runes. A growl rumbled low and long, a landslide within Drogon's chest. Jon braced, not for flame, but for judgment. Then, suddenly, the heat lessened. He blinked to find the dragon's tongue flicking out, tasting the air around him. Almost amused, Drogon's cumbersome head nudged forward with surprisingly delicate force and pressed his nose against Jon's chest. Beneath the smear of soot, left on leather, Jon felt something shatter. Fear, perhaps, or a barrier stitched by centuries of dragon rider myth. He brought one ungloved hand to that canyoning snout, resting it on scale rough as volcanic glass. The surface thrummed with life. A furnace encased in living armor. The dragon's eye, nearer than the moon, studied him. In its molten depths, he glimpsed wheat fields burning under a summer sun, ships collapsing into green wildfire, children shrieking in alleyways half a world away. Power, uncontained, demanding purpose. Easy, Jon murmured, though whether he addressed Drogon or himself he could not tell. Behind him, Daenerys exhaled a breath she'd held long enough to become prayer. "It is done," she whispered. Guards watching from arrow loops crossed themselves, some in the sept star, others in the relativistic infinity of the Lord of Light. They would speak of that touch for decades. How the wolf knelt and the dragon bowed, and a new legend drew its first breath. The two-headed dragon, forged not of myth, but of man and beast. Yet ceremony remained. A saddle, wrought overnight by Kuhono's leather workers, lay nearby, dark, supple, and studded with Valyrian steel buckles recovered from the spoils of Casterly Rock. Jon lifted it, surprising himself with the steadiness of his grip. Drogon settled to his haunches, wings partly unfurled like black sails waiting for wind. Drums pounded in Jon's ears. Each buckle fastened felt like a rung up some invisible ladder toward the sky. When at last he swung a leg over the massive scapular ridge, he paused, boots searching for harness stirrups, fingers sliding into holds of plated leather. "Breathe," Daenerys called from below. Simple wisdom, yet vital. Jon drew air thick with salt and brimstone, letting it fill the hollows carved by war. He squeezed with knees and whispered, "Fly." With a thunder crack, Drogon launched skyward. The force crushed breath from Jon's chest. Wind howled like breaking steel. Courtyard walls shrank into toy ramparts. He felt the dragon's heartbeat sync with his own, a cadence older than language. Sky opened wide, a dappled canvas of peach and violet, and together they painted it with a shadow vast as a storm cloud. Below, Dragonstone's towers became black candles in dawn's first light. Daenerys watched, tears gleaming but unshed, as the man and monster she loved measured the horizon and found room enough for a future unimagined. Around her, Unsullied knelt. Dothraki raised curved blades to the sky, and the northern bannermen slackened mouths in awe that swallowed their doubts whole. The flight did not end quickly. Drogon spiraled above the coast, banking toward the sunrise, each wing beat a booming drum that scattered gulls in frenzied motes of white. Jon gripped tightly, yet found, almost to his disbelief, that instinct guided his weight. As Drogon tilted left, Jon leaned in anticipation. As the dragon flared wings to slow, Jon loosed the breath he hadn't known he held. Below, the storm-dark tiles of the painted table roof flashed by, then the ruins of Summerhall and the ghostly skeleton of the Kingswood. Fleets at anchor looked like silver scales in blue glass. They returned hours later to a courtyard now thronged with onlookers. Jon slid from the saddle, legs trembling but heart ablaze. Drogon huffed, smoke curling around black teeth, then turned to nuzzle Daenerys when she approached. Her hand lingered on his jaw for a moment before she faced Jon. Did he listen? Jon, cheeks still wind-burned, allowed a laugh. Raw, astonished. "He sang," he said. Her answering smile was small, but fiercely bright. "Then we will compose a crowned chorus, you and I." Before the joy could crystallize into planning, Varys emerged from the archway, robes dragging secrecy like a shadow behind him. "Forgive my intrusion," he said. Voice the smooth purr of a knife across silk. "But the realm does not pause for bridal flights." Daenerys knotted her fingers but met his gaze. "What news?" "The Lords Declarant of the Reach gather at Bitterbridge. They debate whether a dragon queen may wed a northern king without the realm's consent." His lips curved in a faint line. "They fear two heads on one dragon might breathe two fires upon their fields. Then we show them unity brings harvest, not ash," Daenerys said. Jon's mind leapt to corridors of Winterfell, to lords who had scraped kneecaps on cold flagstones before swearing to honor Daenerys, yet whose tongues, he knew, still shaped words like foreign queen, southern fire. He pictured Sansa, standing between loyalty and caution. He would need her counsel, and the North would need proof this marriage meant more than dragons perched upon their halls. He looked to Daenerys. "We invite them north," he said, "to witness the wedding beneath the weirwoods of Winterfell, where old gods and new may both stand witness. The North will see I have not bent knee for fear of flame, but for love of the realm." Varys arched a brow. "The Reach will not relish snow. Let them learn to relish survival," Jon replied. "If they wish to eat bread in summer, they must sow seed in winter." Daenerys reached for his hand and laced her fingers with his. "Then we ride for Winterfell," she said. "But not alone. Drogon and Rhaegal will fly ahead, not as conquerors, but as heralds of hope." Her thumb brushed a soot smudge upon his cheek. The intimacy of the gesture quieted the courtyard to reverent stillness. Jon felt a hush settle inside him too, a calm deeper than the black lake of the godswood. He had ridden death itself and returned with dawn on his shoulders. Preparations unfolded like a tapestry stitched by frantic hands. Smiths hammered new buckles. Seamstresses worked silver thread into fabrics of crimson and white, the colors of a house that had never flown, yet soon would. The two-headed dragon, one head crowned in ice, the other wreathed in fire. Ravens flurried skyward, carrying invitations sealed with wax that captured twin sigils entwined. Davosi sails unfurled under dark skies, bearing grain northward in silent thanks to the king who had saved their sons from the night. Dothraki Kalazars, Onse nomads with no word for throne, practiced salutes in the snow, while unsullied measured parade steps that left disciplined furrows across mud and ice. In the castle forges, Gendry Baratheon oversaw a new project at Jon's quiet request. A circlet of carefully blended Valyrian steel and northern black iron, forged together until the weld could not be seen. The smith asked no questions when Jon insisted the metal be cooled, not in water, nor oil, but in snow gathered from the highest parapet. "So the North tempers the flame," Jon said. Gendry only nodded, sweat streaking soot-dark cheeks. Nights grew deeper as they marched north. In the gold-red glow of campfires, Dothraki children giggled when ghost-white deerwolves stepped from the trees. Rhaegal's green wings flashed against the purple sky at dusk. Drogon's shadow fell across barrows and barony alike, stirring equal parts fear and wonder. At Moat Cailin the army paused. Jon stood upon the ancient causeway stones, half buried in bog water, and felt history whisper beneath his soles. 500 years earlier, dragons had never crossed this line, never looked upon the heart of the old kingdom of the North. Tonight, two would soar beyond it, and with them rode the hope that centuries of blood could be braided into something stronger. When at last Winterfell's stout towers rose against a sky thick with winter's first real clouds, snowflake shadows danced through the hot breath of spectators. Sansa waited upon the battlements, red hair whipped by wind, Arya at her side, one hand resting lightly on the hilt of needle. Bran's chair was stationed at the main gate, his gaze distant as if reading the threads of each snowflake's descent. A hush swept the yard as Drogon circled once, twice, then descended to land beyond the trenched walls, lest his weight collapse the ancient masonry. Rhaegal followed, coils of steam frosting his flanks. Jon dismounted, boots sinking into fresh snow, his breath clouding white. Silence broken only by the creak of timber, the rustle of banners, the soft thump of bridal flowers falling from numb fingers. Sansa descended wooden stairs, leaving red footprints on fresh white. She halted before Jon, eyes flicking to the dragon's towering presence, then back to him, reading the changes carved by wind and flame. He waited, heart drumming. At last she spoke. "Brother," she said, and in her voice were seasons of childhood and years of steel-tempered resolve. "Welcome home." Jon exhaled, fogging the space between them. "I bring a queen," he said, "and a bride." Daenerys approached, fur-lined cloak flowing over shoulders that knew heat but not cold. She bowed her head ever so slightly to Sansa. "Lady of Winterfell," she greeted, the winter wind snagging her words. "I ask welcome and offer my heart in return." Sansa's blue gaze lingered on the queen's extended hand, perhaps remembering the heat of dragonfire on a field of white. Then she placed her hand atop Daenerys. "Winterfell is yours," she said. "Treat her people gently, and we will keep you warm." A slow smile thawed Daenerys' lips. Behind her, Drogon rumbled, as if satisfied. That night, the feast held none of the riotous energy of the king in the North's homecoming months past. Instead, it hummed with an almost sacred tension, as though each toast or song must first bow to the memory of all who had died for this roof to still stand. Bran offered quiet counsel by hearthlight. Speaking of ravens dreaming of better tomorrows. Arya watched Daenerys with Predator's assessment, yet her nod at the end of the queen's toast spoke more than any vow. When the hall's fires dimmed and guests drifted to bed, Jon found himself alone in the godswood, snow wrapping the weirwood's red leaves in spectral hush. He stood before the carved face, its crimson sap, tears glimmering. "Father," he murmured. Though which father he invoked, Ned Stark of solemn honor or Rhaegar Targaryen of haunting songs, he could not say. "I hope I do right." Footsteps crunched behind him. Daenerys slipped beneath the weirwood branches, moonlight spangling her hair with silver. She took his hand, and together they knelt. Ice kissed their knees, but heat flared between their joined palms. "I sometimes fear they will never forgive my fire," she whispered. Jon shook his head gently. "The North remembers," he said. "They remember the cold. But they will remember warmth too, if it keeps them alive." He touched her cheek. "We will show them." She leaned into his hand. "Tomorrow we share vows under these boughs. But let me offer one tonight, when only old gods listen." She drew close, breath warm as summer wind upon his lips. "I will wield my fire only when your voice guides it. And you," her fingertips rested over his heart, "will guard your mercy with my flame." The weirwood watched. Silent witness. Snow fell thicker, muting the world, yet the couple's breath made twin clouds that mingled and vanished as one. Dawn broke pearl gray, and Winterfell stirred like a bear from torpor. Bells rang across ramparts. Flowers of frosted crimson thorn garlanded the great hall. Hot mulled wine steamed in wooden cups to chase the bite of wind. Bran, voice resonant though soft, spoke the rites. An echo of northern tradition wrapped around the alien lilt of Valyrian vows Daenerys offered in turn. Jon answered in the old tongue of the first men. Syllables rough yet melodic, vowing hearth and honor, sword and soul. When they clasped hands upon completion, a ripple moved through the crowd like sunrise upon fresh snow. Northern lords lowered their heads. Unsullied raised spears crossed in silent salute. Dothraki beat palms against breastplates, a sound like thunder over distant plains. Sansa stepped forward, carrying the circlet Gendry had forged. She placed it first upon Jon's brow, the black iron kissed by Valyrian steel, then upon Daenerys, where it gleamed like flame frozen in time. Two crowns, but one alloy, inseparable. Outside the walls, Drogon loosed a roar that rattled chandeliers. Rhaegal answered, higher pitched, and the twin calls echoed over snow-drowned fields. The weirwood seemed to shiver, red leaves trembling as if clapping in ghostly applause. There, the tale of war ended, and another began. But stories do not rush. They walk beside us, shadows stretching with each new lantern lit. Raven compounds filled with parchment would record what followed. The uneasy welcome of southern envoys, the Reach surprise at a feast of northern delicacies, the forging of new laws combining dragon-forged freedom with wolf-etched justice. Yet those chronicles would only hint at the quieter flames shared in chambers lit by tallow and starlight, where Daenerys traced the white ghost of Jon's knife scars and Jon pressed lips to the salt tracks left by years of exile upon her skin. Together they planned not conquest, but harvest. Irrigation for drought-stricken villages, roadways cleared of broken ballistae, a council where knights of the Vale could sit beside Dothraki khals and speak of shared pastures. Drogon and Rhaegal soared across each barony, not as harbingers of devastation, but as living sigils that promised swift retribution should old devastations reawaken. And in their wake sprouted awe and tentative hope. Yet peace is a delicate weave. Threads pulled too tight will snap, and some minds cannot forget the smell of ash. Lords left cold by the memory of dragon flame gathered still in hidden rooms, whispering of forged chains strong enough to bind even fire. Across the narrow sea, merchant princes eyed Westeros with covetous intent. A realm reunited is a realm ripe for profit, and commerce seldom cares whose banners fly above the gold. Jon knew this. As winter settled deeper, he walked ramparts with Ghost padding silent at his side, watching distant torches wink like stars fallen to earth. His men, her men, now their men, but men whose hearts each carried secrets. He felt the weight of two crowns forged into one, and wondered if the alloy might yet crack. Daenerys knew it too. She read reports by bedside candle while Jon slept, deciphering emissaries' honeyed words for the salt-stung threats beneath. She trained soldiers in spear ranks at dawn, showing that a dragon queen could wield steel upon the ground as surely as scale in the sky. Fire can only protect if it moves, she reminded herself, and hearts burn out if they smolder unseen. One night, as ice crystals laddered window panes, they sat in the solar with maps spread on a table of rough-hewn birch. Winterfell's answer to Dragonstone's ancient painted slab. Arya perched near the hearth sharpening a dagger. Bran murmured of ravens alighting along the wall, and Sansa compiled ledgers of grain and men. A family, once shattered like dragonglass beneath the Night King's heel, now circled by candlelight, forging strategy not of conquest, but of guardianship. Jon traced a finger from Gulltown to Riverrun. If we reinforce these roads, the grain of the riverlands can reach eerie passes before snow closes them. He glanced to Daenerys. And your Dothraki riders could patrol each convoy. She nodded. In return, the Vale might cede timber to rebuild Summerhall's ruins into a refuge for war orphans. Her eyes sparked. A dragon pit reborn, not for beasts, but for children who lost parents to beasts of men. Sansa smiled, small and proud. A wolf's den run by a dragon's heart. They spoke late, until candles melted into pools of liquid shadow, and Bran whispered of shapes moving beyond the wall. Voices older than even he could name. Yet the fire in the hearth held steady, fueled by oak cut at dawn by men who once would have raised swords against each other. Snow fell heavier as moons turned. Yet the dragon's wing beats churned the stifled air above villages, keeping paths clear. Their warmth coaxed early sprouts in sheltered plots. Elderly wives began weaving songs of the two-headed dragon, who melted winter's claws. In taverns, once rival soldiers drank from the same keg, arguing whether Drogon's breath could roast a whole herd at once, laughter chasing each boast. But dark waters run under still ice. Far to the south, at Old Town's high tower, maesters discovered ancient manuscripts half crumbling to dust, describing Valyrian rituals that bound dragons to glass candles, and obscure prophecies of twin monarchs. The second coming heralding not peace, but a cataclysm birthed by divided flame. The ink reached citadel quills, then raven wings, then trembling hands of lords who had lost sons at the loot train. Gold turned to molten rivers by dragonfire. They whispered, better to shatter the crown than be burned to feed it. Secret forges sparked at night. In the shadows of King's Landing, still battered by war, orphan captains of shattered sellsword companies found coins sliding into palms from faceless patrons north and south. Contracts to cripple grain convoys, sabotage Dothraki patrols, poison unsullied cisterns. Small flames were lit beneath the tapestry of peace, threatening to char the threads one by one. Jon felt it first in dreams. Visions of Drogon screaming above Winterfell as ballistae lightning cut scales, of Daenerys reaching for him through a storm of embers, of a crown melted into slag under a weirwood's bleeding eyes. He woke sweating, Ghost's muzzle pressed to his cheek. Beside him, Daenerys stirred, whispers of Valyrian slipping from troubled lips. She felt it in daylight, a raven whose seal of Bitterbridge broke too easily, revealing text replaced mid-flight. A delegation from Dorne whose smiles faltered when asked to pledge oaths by dragonfire. Regal snapping at the wind as if scenting an unseen predator. They convened in the solar again, maps replaced now by scattered letters, broken arrows, burned scraps recovered from ambushed wagons. Arya stood in the corner, eyes sharp as newly honed steel. Bran's gaze clouded, seeing beyond walls to corridors of time that trembled like harp strings. "It spreads," Jon said, voice low. "Like frost creeping under a door while hearth embers die." Daenerys' hands balled white. "Let me meet it with fire." Sansa shook her head. "A single village scorched will undo the trust we have built. Fear breeds faster than corn." Jon reached across the table, covering Daenerys' fist. "We douse the embers with truth. Ride together to each holdfast. Let them see both dragon and wolf guarding, not devouring." Arya sheathed her dagger. "And if truth fails?" Jon looked to her, understanding the question beneath. "Then we wield shadow, as you have. But only if light gives no quarter." Daenerys' gaze softened, but determination glinted bright. "Then tomorrow we fly to Fairmarket. Let them see how quickly dragons deliver aid, not ruin." Morning over Winterfell carried the scent of pine smoke and frost. The courtyard filled with supplies, dried fish, mealy rye, jars of arbor honey. Unsullied formed quiet ranks, arming with shields painted in twin sigils. Direwolf and dragon coiled in silver. Dothraki saddled horses, braids clinking with tiny soul bells that chimed a ritual vow. To protect the Khal and Khaleesi of sky and snow. Jon approached Drogon, who crouched low as though he too sensed the weight of today's flight. Daenerys climbed first, graceful foot finding the stirrup as though born for sky. Jon mounted behind her, the saddle built to carry them both, leather creaking under the combined weight of destiny and bone. They took to the air, Rhaegal shadowing close. Clouds split around them like curtains pulled by unseen hands, revealing lands blanketed by snow, rivers like silver seams in white cloth. Villages dotted the horizon. Smoke columns rising timidly. Farther south, the green fork wound through brown fields, mottled by winter's loom. They banked west, Drogon's wings stirring snowstorms into swirling plumes. Children raced outside cottages, tiny arms flung wide as dragon shadow washed over them. Mothers glanced up, fear flickering to awe as they saw two riders, not one, no tyrant alone in the sky, but a pair bound by unity. At Fairmarket the river docks lay fractured, timbers snapped by early ice. Men labored to free trapped barges where grain had spoiled, leaving rats fat and bellies thin. When Drogon's silhouette darkened the town, workers dropped mallets in terror. But Daenerys guided the dragon to land beyond the far bank, smoke curling but no flame. Jon dismounted first, hands raised empty. "We come to mend," he called. They spent hours directing Unsullied to fell trees for new piers, Dothraki to lash rope and muscle to stuck barges. Daenerys walked among townsfolk, lending arms to lift beams. The scarred back of her hand bled where a stray nail snagged, yet she did not flinch. At sundown grain sacks from Winterfell's reserves were distributed, stamped with both wolf and dragon. Elders murmured that perhaps the stories carried by snowbound merchants were true after all. Yet hidden among the grateful throng, a man whose cloak bore no sigil fingered a tiny vial at his waist. Green liquid sloshed under a wax seal. His orders were clear: slip the poison into the queen's cup before night's end. He watched as Daenerys laughed gently at a child's attempt to pronounce Misa. Her cheeks flushed in the dying light. The assassin hesitated. No tyrant here, only a woman with calloused palms and bright eyes. Doubt shivered through his resolve. A shadow passed overhead, Regal sweeping low to roost on a crag. The watching man swallowed. Perhaps the rumor that dragons could smell treachery held truth. He stepped back into the crowd just as Jon turned, wolf's eyes scanning faces. The murderer's courage withered. The vial slipped from sweating fingers, buried in straw, forgotten. Night found them encamped beneath stars that shimmered like cold embers. Daenerys sat by the fire, bandaged hand extended toward flame, its heat gentle compared to the furnace of Dragonscale. Jon settled beside her, offering a cup of spiced wine. "To mending," he said. Daenerys drank, lips staining deep red. "To mending," she echoed, then tilted her head. "You fear I give too much of myself." "I fear you forget to keep some for your own flame," he admitted. "A hearth needs banked coals." She smiled, weary but warm. "Then be my hearth." He pressed a kiss to her knuckles, tasting resin salve and iron tang. Nearby, unsullied rotated watch, and wolves howled beyond tree lines, a choir that seemed to cradle the camp rather than harry it. In the hush between howls, Jon whispered, "When I rode Drogon, I felt his heart. It is vast, yes, but lonely, like the wall, built for purpose yet yearning for company." Daenerys leaned into his shoulder. "He has family now, as do we. Perhaps even a dragon may learn peace." Jon's gaze drifted skyward. "Peace," he repeated, as though testing whether the old tongue could shape such a fragile word. "We will keep it breathing." Snow melted sooner than expected that spring. Crocuses speared through slush outside Winterfell's walls, and small folk ventured out to watch dragons sun themselves on watchtowers that had not seen sunshine in months. Letters arrived from storms and encouraging trade, from the arbor pledging wine shipments in exchange for seeds that might survive harsher winters, even from Dorne offering water rights in a show of cooperation unseen since Nymeria's fleet. But other ravens came too, parchments inked with threats, masked by polite legalisms. Highgarden's Mace Ryerdale demanded audits of crop tithes, implied refusal to pay crown tax if dragons circled too near his orchards. The Ironbank's missive requested repayment of debts incurred by the crown prior to Cersei's downfall. Debts tied to reparations now feeding war-torn orphans. The crown could bend or risk default, the bank warned. In council, voices rose. Tyrion, returning from a surveying tour, argued for appeasement. Arya, perched by the hearth, favored more direct persuasion, steel in the dark. Sansa sought compromise, while Varys murmured of alliances to hedge against the bank's reach. Jon listened, then turned to Daenerys. "We refuse to let coin slit throats we saved from steel. Yet war to pay debt breeds more debt." He proposed a daring remedy. Merge the coffers of North and Crown to guarantee small folk relief, funded by dragon-escorted caravans opening new trade with Bravos, bypassing the bank's monopoly on credit. Risky, Tyrion warned. Bravosi might balk, the bank might retaliate. But Daenerys' eyes lit with fierce resolve. "Let them see our treasury's heart beats in the sky," she said. And so Drogon and Rhaegal crossed narrow sea currents to Bravos, escorted by a fleet of sleek new hulls built from northern pine. Merchants gaped as Dragon Shadow cooled the bright sea. The Sea Lord himself emerged beneath the colossal Titan's arch, rehearsing kindness behind fanfold sleeves. When Jon Snow disembarked on the quay, clad in fine black-scaled cloak, lined with northern wolf fur, and Daenerys Targaryen followed, hair streaming like molten silver, an era pivoted under the feet of two deposed heirs, who came not begging loans, but offering partnership hammered of ice-hardened iron and red-hot ambition. In the watery halls of the Sea Lord's palace, they carved a treaty. Bravos would extend credit forgiven of usurious interest in exchange for exclusive shipping lanes along the Arbor-Winterfell route, protected by dragon patrols during pirate season. The crown would repay past debts not in coin, but in infrastructure. Jointly funded dry docks at Maidenpool and ports along Crackclaw Point. The Iron Bank's emissaries seethed behind velvet curtains, but numbers obey power, and dragons recalibrate ledgers. The crown's new credit line, free of strangling interest, breathed fresh life into the realm's bruised arteries. Victory, however, breeds envy. Across Westeros, whispers resumed. Dragons grow fat on coin while lords tighten belts. Assassination attempts multiplied. Daggers hidden in loaves of bread, crossbows rigged behind hearth tapestries, wine casks laced with strangler. Each was foiled by the watchful eyes of Arya, the silent nights of Unsullied. The unnatural wisdom Bran hinted at, when ravens fluttered restless. But the greatest threat came cloaked in love. A young lord of the Reach, Florent Tyrell, born of cousins twice removed, courted Sansa with poetic letters, warm silks, and tales of gentle harvest. His smile was open, his compliments to Jon ever appreciative of northern fortitude. Yet beneath his courtesy lay a scheme. Seduce the Lady of Winterfell. Carve a wedge between wolf and dragon. Exploit the fracture to restore Tyrell ascendancy. Sansa saw through the charade early, yet she played along, gathering insight. One winter dim afternoon she approached Jon and Daenerys in the solar. Let the Reach think I consider his suit. She proposed. Invite him north for Yuletide. Hell bring his co-conspirators, and we will learn their depth. Daenerys regarded her with new respect. Bane of thorns indeed, she mused. Thus the halls of Winterfell blazed with Yuletide torches when Lord Florent arrived, trailing courtiers whose smiles froze at the sight of dragons roosting on frosty ramparts. Feasts unfurled, roasted boar stuffed with apples, trencher bread soaked in mulled ale, minstrels spinning tales of Garth Greenhand and the children of the forest. Amid the revelry, various little birds darted unnoticed, collecting whispers thick as falling snow. On the third night, as musicians tuned lutes, Arya slipped unseen into the guests' chambers. There she found parchments sealed with the sigil of Old Town's mysterious Order of the Broken Chain, a splintered circle whose members vowed to sever dragon rule by any means. Plans detailed acolytes stationed in Winterfell stables, ready to ignite the hay with wildfire stolen from disbanded alchemists' guilds. Arya's silent dispatch ended the plot before midnight. Stables awoke unburned, and conspirators awoke bound in cords of direwolf hide, destined for the Queen's justice. Sansa met Florent in the courtyard at dawn, the man trembling under the watchful eye of Rhaegal overhead. Love forged in falsehood is brittle, she told him. You mistook courtesy for naivete. I studied politics at Cersei's knee and cruelty at Ramsay's. You are neither master of masks nor monster enough to cow me. He stammered until Unsullied escorted him away. Sansa turned to Jon and Daenerys. We made our warning, she said. Let them know even in Winterfell's innocence lives a blade sharper than Redkeep intrigue. Daenerys nodded, a flame of fierce pride warming her expression. Jon placed a hand on Sansa's shoulder. You defend the realm as surely as any dragon, he said. Peace, precarious, held another year. Children born under the twin crowns grew not knowing hunger. Dothraki horse herds grazed Riverland's meadows, paying tax in leather goods, their calls learning to count in Westerosi ciphers. Ironborn skalds sang of dragons, lighting pyres for drowned god rituals, forging curious faith between salt and fire. But every dawn births shadows. In the crypts beneath Winterfell, Bran's cheeks hollowed as visions came sharper. Nights spent tracing threads of green sight through vaults of time. He saw fires beneath the trident, men in black robes chanting to shadows shaped like worms, knives carved of dragonglass tipped with obsidian tears. He spoke of them in hushed council, his voice distant. A cult to bind dragon souls in stone, he murmured. They seek to shackle fire and command it. Daenerys felt chill steal over her bones. Who leads them? But Bran's eyes clouded, offering no name. They hide in echoes of Valyria's doom. Jon tightened his jaw. Then we ride to the trident, he said. Daenerys clasped his hand. Together, she agreed. Thus the two-headed dragon prepared once more to cross sky and snow, each wing beat echoing across the fragile peace they had forged. Northern smiths sharpened steel under sparks of midnight. Maesters penned urgent letters, and somewhere in a forgotten ruin by the river, cultists raised crystal shards that shimmered with trapped flame. The tale did not end here, for stories drift like embers on unseen winds, lighting new fires in distant valleys. Yet in this moment, on the cusp of another flight, Jon Snow and Daenerys Targaryen stood side by side atop Winterfell's highest tower. Below them stretched a realm healing, above them a sky waiting to be written upon by dragonfire and destiny. They turned toward each other, and in that breath before dawn, two hearts beat as one. Ice and fire fused, forging a future as perilous and magnificent as the dragons that bound them together. And when Drogon's roar shattered the silence, It was less a sound of war than a herald of continuation. A promise that the two-headed dragon would rise again, carrying hope in its shadow and light in its blazing eyes, until every corner of Westeros learned that mercy tempered by flame could outshine the darkest night. Snow whispered over the battlements in spiraling eddies. The hush of dawn kept at bay by torch fires guttering along Winterfell's high walkways. In the bowels of the castle, unsullied patrols marched a cadence so precise it scarcely stirred the drafty corridors, while direwolves prowled the outer yards with eyes that caught every flicker of lamplight. Yet the heart of Winterfell pulsed in the solar where Daenerys stood gazing upon a map pinned beneath glass beads of melted candle wax. Jon's shadow joined hers, cast long by the hearth. He had shed his cloak for leathers quilted against the bite of northern spring, a season that smelled of thaw yet bit like winter's jealous lover. Ghost padded behind him, silent and watchful, his white coat dusted with falling flakes. "We've pushed roadwork crews as far south as the Twins," Jon said, voice carrying gravel from yesterday's council. "Wagons travel unmolested. Too many eyes now for any cutthroat company to risk." Daenerys brushed fingertips across the trident traced in blue ink. "Yet they gather here all the same." Bran seized them. Her hand paused above a crooked black rune Bran had inked beside a bend of river. The ink glimmered faintly under candlelight, iridescent as a beetle's shell. Jon frowned. That mark again. A binding sigil. Bran's voice drifted from the doorway. He sat in his wheeled chair pushed by Podrick, pale skin stretched fragile across cheekbones, sharpened by half-slept nights. Drawn from fragments of Valyrian shard text, it cannot be traced with ordinary ink. The pigment must be mixed with dragon's blood. Daenerys' stomach tightened. Only 3 such inks should exist, those kept by the citadel under lock and iron key. Bran's dark blue gaze lifted. A 4th was made in secret after the doom, sealed away in the vaults beneath the high tower. Someone has broken that seal. Menso. Jon felt the ghosts of the wall in Bran's hollow voice. Winds howling across frozen stones, warning of forces older than kings. He braced both palms on the table. "Then we confront them before they tighten the chain." Daenerys straightened, braids brushing against the fur collar at her neck. "We leave at first light. Rhaegal scouts ahead. Drogon bears us. No dragons." Bran's words sliced the air. "Their enchantment is tuned for blood of the dragon. If Drogon nears, the cult's crystals may snare his spirit, turn breath to stone inside his lungs. Fly, and you risk offering them the greatest weapon ever wrought." Thou. Silence pressed inward like frost. Jon's jaw flexed. "Then we ride south by land, swift and cloaked." Daenerys considered, then nodded once. "We take only those sworn by soul, not coin. Grey Worm and his 10. Arya, Davos, Gendry, enough to slip unseen yet stand when steel is drawn." She met Jon's eyes. "We leave Winterfell guarded by Sansa and Ser Brienne. Bran guides us through Raven's sight." Bran's chair creaked as he leaned forward. "Beware green crystal pillars. They hum at dusk like wasps. Shatter them, the spell falters. But if they turn amber, retreat. The trap has closed." "Then no." Podrick rolled the chair back as Bran's eyes clouded, lost again to 1,000 wing beats. Ka. Gray morning dragged its talons across the sky when the small company slipped through Winterfell's Hunter's Gate. Hoofbeats muffled in wet snow. The party rode under black-white banners devoid of sigils to draw no unwanted heraldry. Davos led on a rangy gelding speckled like granite, map tucked under cloak. Arya rode light, needle hidden in her boot, wolf-pelt hood casting fox-sharp shadows across her eyes. Behind her chugged a wagon laden with barrels disguised as salted fish, but hiding dragonglass axes and wildfire flasks sealed thrice in wax. At the rear Gendry handled reins of 2 pack mules bearing forgesmith's tools. Hammer, tongs, bellows, iron rods tipped with Valyrian steel. "In case we need to mend hope mid-march," he'd told Jon with a grin that tried, and failed, to hide anxiety. Jon and Daenerys rode side by side on midnight steeds matched in stride, no crowns upon their brows. but the weight of them sat in every straightened back of the soldiers ahead. 9 unsullied flanked Grey Worm. Faces blank, spears wrapped in burlap to prevent telltale glints. For 3 days they skirted half-grown fields where frost still worried the early shoots. Villagers glanced up from muddy furrows to watch strangers pass, but offered no challenge beyond wary nods. The rumors of dragons patrolling these skies had tamped bandit hearts into quivering acquiescence. Each night, the company camped beneath twisted oaks or low ridges. Fires kept small. Jon walked perimeter with Ghost, while Daenerys sat with Arya sharpening steel whispers into the whetstone's hiss. They crossed into the southerly reaches of the Neck on the 5th dawn. The marshland exhaled rot-sweet perfume. Reeds bowed to sluggish wind, and frogs chirped like mist-struck bells in unseen hollows. Davos guided them along causeways of turf, and half-sunken paving stones left from the Andalmarch ages gone. Horse hooves sucked at mud. Leeches clung to greaves. By dusk of the 6th day, distant river mists glittered with green motes. Tiny sparks flaring, then dying like embers smothered in dew. Grey Worm raised a fist. The column halted. Arya slipped forward like mist herself, vanishing among hummocks. When she returned, the glint in her eyes outshone the waning light. Crystals! She said against Jon's ear, thick as a man's forearm, sunk in the mud. They hum. Grey Worm ordered unsullied into wedge. Davos muttered prayer to any gods minded to listen south of the wall. Daenerys crouched beside a lump of crystal, half buried beneath waterlogged peat. It pulsed faintly with rhythmic glow. Green to black to green, like a heart beating in poisonous repose. She brushed sediment aside. A tingling pricked her fingers, a numb heat creeping toward her wrist. She snatched her hand back with a hiss. Jon knelt. Effect on you? Like pins of ice. It wants blood. She flexed fingers until sensation returned, then rose. We destroy them here before the trapline thickens. Unsullied laid out silent cordon while Gendry unpacked picks and chisels. The first blow sent a crackle of energy skittering across the murk. Green flares fizzed upward, sputtering out as quickly. Within minutes, shards lay in dull shards. Hum died. But deeper in the marsh, echo answered echo, like voices across a canyon. Other pillars awakening. Ghost bared fangs at the darkness. Arya knocked arrow. Arya. Davos pointed west. Flame. A lone flicker had appeared beyond stands of alder, torchlight bobbing. Grey Worms signaled to scatter. Men melted into reed and shadow. Jon and Daenerys slid behind a moss-laundered stump, their breaths quiet clouds. Through the mist trudged a procession, robed figures gaunt as scarecrows, hoods embroidered with sinuous twin dragons devouring their own tails. At their head marched a woman of middle years, hair braided with jagged shards of. Jon's stomach lurched, crystal luminous at each step. Behind her floated a litter drawn not by men, but by leather-masked youths, ribs sticking through ragged skins. Upon the litter rested a sphere of glass, inside which swirled emerald vapors coalescing into the suggestion of wings. Arya's whisper reached Jon. They imprisoned dragonfire itself. Daenerys' hand found his wrist, or its soul. Her face whitened. The woman raised staff tipped with shard glimmering starbright. In chorus, the procession chanted, "Mark down, Azantis enogra, Azantis nogra ebra." Rodra ser, abro, set Rakiros, warrior of fire. Rise for master of shadow. Bran's warning thundered in Jon's skull. If pillars turn amber, retreat. The staff's tip bloomed amber. Jon's fingers closed on Daenerys, but Arya moved quicker than fear. She burst from darkness, arrow slicing torch flame, embedding shaft into the staff. Spark spray erupted. The orb wobbled. Green vapors leaked, curling into the cold air like serpents tasting freedom. Chaos split the night. Unsullied surged, spears flashing moonlit arcs. Robed acolytes shrieked incantations that bled tongues. their voices cracking as the crystals they worshipped shattered by iron. The woman with the braided shards spun, eyes phosphorescent. She thrust palm forward. From the orb burst tendril of virid fire lashing at Grey Worm. He rolled, armor steaming where lick struck. Daenerys stepped into open ground, hair whipping. She spoke a single command in High Valyrian that turned frost beneath her breath to vapor. "Mark down. Dracarys." No dragon answered. None were near. Yet the words seemed to rip the air. The leaking vapors shrieked, recoiling as if burned by the authority embedded in the command. Jon followed, long claw clearing scabbard, its pale light glowing faint against the unnatural green. Acolytes hurled handfuls of powder that sparked emberflecks. Where they landed, the moss blackened, releasing noxious fumes. Unsullied pressed forward regardless. Blades sliced cloth. Cries fell into marsh. Davos' knife laid one assailant open from chin to navel, the old smuggler's face grim with necessity. The lead priestess retreated toward a taller pillar, thrumming amber 3 times the height of a man. She slammed her wounded staff to its base. Energy sheared outward, knocking Arya back. Ghost leapt, jaws clamping on an acolyte's throat before vanishing again into shadow. Jon advanced on the priestess. Her lips curled in disdain. "Breaker of chains." She spat in common. "Has forged new shackles." Her gaze flicked to Daenerys. "Every empire devours itself. Our chain only hastens the feast." Jon's answer was steel. Long claw slashed. She parried with her staff. Crystal met Valyrian, a discordant shriek. Green sparks showered. Behind them Gendry swung forgehammer, demolishing smaller pillars. Each shatter muted the cacophony. Daenerys joined Jon, twin daggers given by Missandei years ago, glimmering silver. She ducked a sweeping strike, rolled, and slashed the priestess's leg. Blood sizzled green where it struck crystal shards. The priestess howled, staggering into the pillar's glow. Amber raced up her veins, turning flesh glassy. Soon her skin cracked, crumbling to sand jade bright. She opened her mouth. No sound emerged, only wind. Then she broke apart, fragments scattering into the mud with soft chiming. The tall pillar flickered, wavering between amber and sickly chartreuse. Jon shouted, "Down!" Unsullied shield wall locked. The pillar imploded, a waterfall of shards clattering harmless among reeds. An unnatural silence fell. Mist drifted, unlit now. Arya retrieved her arrow from broken staff. Snapped off the fouled tip. Gendry wiped sweat and marsh water from his brow. Grey Worm wiped scorched greaves. "Many escaped," he said. "They'll scurry south like roaches," Davos added. "But one nest crushed weakens the swarm." Daenerys stared at the fallen orb, now cracked and empty. Faint warmth radiated from within, reminiscent of Dragonheart at rest. She crouched, palm hovering but not touching. Whatever they trapped was a spark only. They needed Drogon to ignite true flame. Jon sheathed Longclaw. "And we denied them." He pressed hand to her shoulder. "But this was only one cell." She rose, eyes hard. "Then we extinguish each before they gather shards enough to pierce the world." Ah, Ka. 2 days later, they reached the outlying hamlet of Stonebridge, perched above the green-black ribbon of the Trident. Smoke still curled from hearths, though midday sun scoured clouds to silver wisp. Villagers eyed the party with apprehension until Davos displayed a double-sealed letter bearing Stark direwolf and Targaryen dragon. Doors opened. Bread and onion ale issued forth in hesitant hospitality. Jon spoke with the headman beneath a lichen-scarred arch. "Have strangers passed? Robes, crystals, chanting?" The man nodded toward southern woods. "Heard music like horns of glass each dusk." Sheep fled pens. Dogs whined until dawn. Arya's jaw tightened. More pillars. Daenerys turned to Grey Worm. "Secure North Bank. No torches near reeds. Could ignite captured vapors." That night they bivouacked beside Stonebridge's ruined tower, once a king's levy office now hollowed by rebel fires from decades past. Stars marched overhead, but the moon hid behind gauzy veil. Jon walked rampart remains with ghost, senses stretched. Somewhere an owl screeched. Marsh fog crawled along waterline, carrying scent of algae and decay, and something else. Sweet metal tang had inhaled near crystals. He hurried back to camp. Daenerys met him halfway, violet eyes glinting. "You smell it too." He nodded. "They're close." A horn, unsullied, low warning, sounded. Men scrambled. Through mist emerged glowing silhouettes, dragging carts, heaped with green crystal. 10, 20. More than they'd shattered. At cart center bobbed a coffin wrought of lattice metal containing flickering ember brighter than any they'd yet seen. "New trap," Davos muttered, throat dry. Jon's mind raced. They could not call dragons. Bran's warning remained. Yet speed alone could intercept before pillars rooted. "Gendry," Jon barked. "Forge oil and pitch." Gendry kicked open wagon, hauled cask of pitch. Arya, Grey Worm each grabbed faggots of dry reed bound earlier for cold nights. Within moments torches caught. Daenerys watched pillars being planted along riverbank. If flame touches crystal, vapors might turn air to poison. She exhaled steady breath. But water quenches flame. Jon caught her intent. "A river of fire," he said. They positioned downstream on a gentle slope, leading to the water's edge. Gendry smashed the cask, pitch sloshing across mud like black mirror. Davos slid a wineskin of lamp oil into the mix. Unsullied advanced as living barricade. Shields interlocked. A coit spotted them, shrieking anew. Chant soared. Crystals planted, glowing faster. Amber blurs. The coffin's ember brightened to molten white. "Light it," Daenerys commanded. Arya flicked steel on flint. Spark met oil. Flames leapt, greedy amber tongues drawn as though magnets toward crystal glow. A pyre river rushed downhill, licking at pillars which hissed, cracked. Green vapor belched, but flame devoured it, turning emerald to pale smoke spiraling harmless into night. A sound like ice splitting thundered as coffin burst under temperature whiplash. Roiling plume shot skyward. Swirling into shape of saurian skull. Jaws wide in silent scream before diffusing on the wind. Acoits panicked, robes catching fire, some tumbling into river where cold current carried charred husks away. Within minutes, only embers and hissing sparks remained. Grey Worm ordered water buckets flung to douse pitchline. Black smoke stench rose, but air stayed clear. Daenerys approached, cracked coffin, peered at smoldering debris. Inside lay a single scale, larger than her palm, black-edged in opal shimmer. Her breath snagged. "Dragon bone," she whispered. From before the doom, Jon joined her, eyes dark. "They feed spells with relics." She slid scale into leather pouch. "Then we salvage what they would corrupt." Arya approached, face smudged with soot, though grin crooked. "I collect faces," she said, flicking glance at charred cultist. "But theirs would bring only nightmares." "Oh, okay." Dawn lightened fog to pearly blur as ravens circled overhead. A single bird alighted on Bran's preferred perch atop the ruined tower, head tip. Jon detached its scroll. Bran's scrawl urgent. "Be Benet." Pillars near Harrenhal kindling to amber. Fracture coming dawn. "Beware shadows with golden eyes. Destroy at first light or retreat." Jon passed note to Daenerys. She met his gaze. Both turned south toward distant silhouette of twisted gargoyles clawing at the horizon. Harrenhal, monument to dragon wrath. Charred centuries before, by Aegon's Balerion. Jon's jaw set. "It seems fitting we end their treachery where Dragonflame once ended tyranny." Daenerys' smile was thin steel. "Let the past remind the future." They set out by midday, leaving Stonebridge secure behind unsullied outpost. Road to Harrenhal wound through deadened forests, where leaves drooped sepia, sap poisoned by warts of crystal sprouting and dying in quick cycles. Gendry fashioned iron mauls weighted to shatter stone. Arya dipped arrowheads in pitch, By twilight Harrenhal's jagged towers arose, black carcass against a blood-orange sky. Heat of some ancient flame still haunted those melted ramparts. Air smelled of slag, long cooled yet forever smoldering in memory. They dismounted at Outer Bailey. Ground here cracked, glassy veins zipping beneath brittle grass. A reflection of ruin above. Grey Worm led unsullied scouting, reporting soon after. Cultists ringed the Kingspire Tower, erecting lattice cages of translucent green, each housing heart-sized flame. At center soared a spire of amber crystal 15 feet tall, base wrapped in charred bones of unhatched dragon eggs. They recognized their shape in horrified silence. A beacon, Daenerys murmured, fury simmering. Meant to draw Drogon from sky, bind him like moth to torch. Jon stared up the melted granite coils. We bring it down. Strategy formed quick. Arya infiltrate via rubble cleft. Eliminate sentries. Grey Worm climbs north parapets. Drop ropes for Unsullied to descend behind line. Davos and Gendry set wildfire sachets along foundation cracks. Jon and Daenerys spear center, targeted at Spire when chaos peaks. Night settled, moon a shard of bone glowing through wisps. The operation began. Arya vanished into darkness, silent as falling ash. Minutes later, distant gurgle signaled first kill. Rope whistled. Unsullied flowed over wall like ink spill. Jon advanced over courtyard littered with debris, Daenerys at his flank. Cultists chanted louder as amber beam intensified. Shadows along walls blinked open golden eyes, creatures wrought of fused bone and crystal, half-formed wyverns the size of dogs, crawling on jointless legs. They clacked crystal mandibles, scuttling toward intruders. Longclaw cleaved one, blade skating over hardened glass before crunching through. It shattered into shards that twitched until stomped under boot. Daenerys' daggers flashed, carving sigils of light. Grey Worm led spear wall sweeping mutated spawn back. From the wall's yellow flame erupted. Wildfire ignited along charges Davos lit. Heat roared. Green inferno climbing melted tower spine. Cultists shrieked. Spire flared amber turning to blinding white. Cracks spider-webbed its length. Jon sprinted, leapt debris, climbing dais where Spire rooted. Daenerys joined, eyes glowing, fury radiating. Together, they drove twin iron wedges Gendry had prepared into fissure. Heaving with combined strength, they pried. Sound like shattering worlds split the night. Spire ruptured, shards shooting skyward before raining molten tears. White flash billowed. Hurricane of wind blowing cultists from feet. In that explosive silence after thunder, a resonance spread. Deep, tremoring pulse that seemed to ripple across miles, as though something vast screamed, then died. Shards cooled midair, falling harmless. Golden-eye creatures crumbled to dust. Echoing quiet lingered. Then Arya's whistle rose, 2 short bursts, clear. Davos surveyed courtyard. Gods be good. We've gutted their heart. Daenerys stood amid glass fragments, cheeks streaked with ash yet eyes shining. No chain strong enough, she whispered. Jon touched her hand. Nor empty threat, so long as 2 hearts beat. Moonlight spilled through skeletal remains of Kingspire onto the pair. Wolf clad in charred leather, dragon crowned in shadow, shards sparkling like constellations reborn around their feet. A.K. In the weeks that followed, word of Harrenhal's liberation swept river by river, road by road. Peasants gathered shards to grind into fertilizer. Nothing of sorcery, only trace minerals to heal fields starved by war. Bards spun songs of 2 monarchs who felled shadow dragons with steel and courage. Even maesters in Citadel's high libraries scribbled addendum. The storm at Harrenhal. First sunset of the crystalline rebellion. Yet Jon and Daenerys did not rest upon songs. They dispatched envoys across sea lanes to Lys and Tyrosh, where glass merchants might traffic unnatural hues. They ordered forge masters in Cahor to craft lanterns burning scentless oil, to catch green flames before they fed on air. Every raven arriving from Bran they answered with swift adjustment of patrol routes. One twilight they stood upon Dragonstone's battlements again, watching tides swirl around basalt. Drogon perched near, black wings mantled, listening. Jon laid palm upon scaled shoulder. "We fought without you, old friend," he murmured. "But your fire kindled our resolve." Drogon's breaths gusted warm as desert wind. He lowered massive head until yellow eye met Jon's, understanding flickering. Daenerys approached, stroking ridged horn. "Our enemies believed they could forge false dragons. Let them now behold the living truth." She turned to Jon, smile kindred to flame. "Ready to fly again?" He mounted behind her, saddle straps creaking. Rhaegal roared in distant courtyard, eager to ascend alongside brother. As Drogon lifted skyward, Jon looked down at ships in the bay. Sails emblazoned with new sigil. 2 dragons entwined, one ivory, one obsidian, circling direwolf at center. Flags snapped in wind. Men saluted. They banked east, sunrise spilling scarlet across waves. Sea breeze tasted of salt and possibility. Beneath them Westeros unfurled, stitched by rivers, patched by winter thaw, renewed by fragile hope. Ahead, beyond the horizon, challenges brewed. Ironbank debts clamoring. Tyroshi pirates arming. Whispers of Golden Company remnants threading into Associ plots. But within Jon's chest drummed calm. Whatever storm rose, they would meet it side by side, backlit by dragonfire. Daenerys turned to him, hair wild in wind, laughter robbed of sound by rushing air yet radiant. He leaned forward, resting helm against hers. No words passed, only understanding. Of battles won, of peace still to forge, of future children who might ride dragons without fear, guided by hearts born of winter and summer bound. Below, the narrow sea glittered like 1,000 shards, remnants of chains broken before they could close. Drogon's wings churned long strokes. Rhaegal's shadow joined, overlapping until earth below was cloaked not in menace but in promise. 2-headed dragons soared, and with each beat the realm's pulse steadied, learning at last the rhythm of harmony, tempered by unyielding resolve. Night would come again, with new dangers and darker magics. But dawn always followed, and where dawn spread, Dragonfire and Wolfwinter walked together, twin lanterns against abyss. And so they flew on, pages of legend turning beneath their wings, inked in the ink of living time, awaiting fresh lines only 2 hearts could write. Ka. Salt wind carried the cries of distant gulls as Drogon sliced the ceiling of cloud, his wings spanning the horizon like unfurled midnight. The world below stretched in shards of amethyst sea and knotted islands, each flecked by torches of civilization that winked awake with dusk. Jon sat close behind Daenerys, the heat of the dragon's spine pulsing through his leather hauberk, the steady thrum of vast lungs lulling him into a calm more primal than sleep. Rhaegal flew abreast, emerald against the bruised sky, ridden by no one yet content to shadow his brother's slipstream. They traveled east because the storms of politics, though quieter for a season, stirred once more across the free cities, and trouble there meant trouble would soon sail for Westeros. 4 days' flight brought them to the outskirts of Cahor. The forest of dark pine at the city's back twitched beneath the downdraft of wings, limbs spitting needles like thrown knives. On the banks of the Cuhoin, the high smith's foundry belched black plumes, iron music ringing across rooftops. The masters of that place had petitioned Dragonstone for an audience, promising chainmail light as boiled leather and arrowheads that splintered stone. But rumors also claimed Cahor, forged fetters meant for dragon limbs, commissioned with Ironbank gold. Jon and Daenerys descended at midnight, landing beyond the walls to avoid riots of reverence and fear. Moonlight silvered Daenerys' braids as she dismounted. "We keep to shadows," she murmured. "Walk among workshops as paupers in search of wage." They dressed accordingly, rue wool cloaks, soot streak upon cheeks, humble belts with hidden blades. Drogon and Rhaegal slipped into the forest's deeper dark, twin titans rendered shadows among shadows. Inside the city, alleys heaved with night commerce. Blacksmith shops glowed like volcanic vents. Foremen bellowed accounts. Slaves with singed wrists ferried molds of glowing steel. Overhead, rivulets of molten waste sluiced through gutters, hissing into canals. The air tasted of copper and burnt marrow. A feast for anyone worshipping weapons. Jon and Daenerys followed the river's bend to a rear courtyard flanked by black brick. Here, a trio of men in polished lamellar whispered beneath a hanging lantern. One bore the tattoo of a broken chain upon his neck, the cult sigil Bran had sketched from his raven's dreams. Daenerys moved first, sliding between hanging oxhide screens, emerging behind the men unseen. Jon appeared opposite, the pair forming jaws around their quarry. "So the Iron Bank delivers 15 more chests," the tattooed man hissed. "Aye," answered a second, voice raspy. "Enough silver to outfit 5,000 sellswords. Tyrosh gives men, Pentos supplies ships, Kuhor gives the shackles. Once the dragons are grounded." Daenerys stepped into the lantern's rim, face half glimmering. "The dragons are listening," she said. Panic cracked over the men's features. Tattoo Neck fumbled for dagger. Jon's fist caught his wrist, snap of bone blossoming red. A second blow flattened the man against softened clay wall, breath whooshing out in a grunt. The others fled, but Arya, who had trailed unseen among slop troughs, tripped one with the haft of a broom, needle touching throat before the man understood the world had reversed. Later, bound captives knelt in a derelict tannery where Drogon's eye glowed through a shuttered grate. Jon questioned softly. Daenerys awaited answers with flame in her gaze. They learned of a Pentosi magister named Corrado Calavos, who courted the Iron Bank's discontent by offering a plan: capture Drogon during next royal inspection of the Stepstones, chain him on Ruby Isle, and parade a conquered dragon before Westerosi envoys to force abdication at Ledger Point. The bank would forgive debts, crowning Corrado the new regent of crown finances, provided he delivered both dragons or their corpses. "Hubris," murmured Jon, wiping blood from knuckles. Daenerys simply turned to Drogon. The dragon's low rumble shook flensed hides from hooks. They left the captives for Kuhor's lesser courts, where coin might spare a beating but would not spare the hand that forged chains for dragons. At dawn, Drogon vaulted skyward, his roar rippling forge smoke into torn banners that spelled warning across the city roofs. Back at Dragonstone, Tyrion received their report while sipping mulled wine to soothe an autumn chill. "The bank never sleeps," he said, "and it does not forgive, except at profit." His impish eyes traced parchment lines of seized correspondence. "Magister Calavos is a spider. Pluck one leg, another grows. We must smash him beneath a boot swiftly, before he scuttles home. Then," Jon pointed to the map, finger resting on the stepstones. "He has gathered ships from rogue Lyseni corsairs, 24 Dromans flying no banner. They stalk grain lanes, seeking to starve King's Landing until the small folk clamor for his credit. Daenerys studied currents. We sail before week's end. Drogon and Rhaegal above. Grey Worm's honor guard below decks. Sir Davos commands the Wolf's Fang fleet." She pressed thumb against Pearl Sound. "We bait his corsairs to the Narrows, where dragons can scour decks but not torch the grain." Tyrion raised brows. "Always the dilemma. Burning enemies who float upon your own bread. Then we break masts, not hulls," Jon said. "Dragons tear sails, crews scuttle to row. Davos boards, quiets mutiny with steel. Simple," Tyrion said dryly, "like milking a direwolf." The plan moved within 2 days. Davos' flagship, the Winter's Grace, cut from black oak and bearing the new twin dragon sigil, led 15 hulks. At sunrise, sails bellied with a brisk wind, convoy curling past Driftmark, while dragons soared sentinel. Jon, armored in charcoal plate etched with silver wolf spirals, paced the quarterdeck. Daenerys stood at prow, hair thrashing, eyes scanning sea for predatory wings of sail. They met their foe at the Broken Spear Strait, thin channel where jagged rocks penned ships like sheep bound for shearing. Calavos corsairs emerged in arrowhead formation. 21 slender hulks painted crimson and teal, rowers beating drums, javelin throwers lining rails. Their figureheads bore snarling worms of green glass, the same hue as cult crystals. Drums thundered battle. Davos maneuvered fleet into Crescent, presenting empty starboard to lure enemy inside the arc. From above, Drogon stooped, his scream splitting sky, a sound older than storms. He banked, tail whipping, claws hooking canvas of the lead corsair, rending sailcloth into flapping ribbons. Rhaegal followed, talons raking rigging, sending yards crashing. Corsair archers loosed barbed shafts, many tipped with burning pitch. Some found Drogon's underwing. He shrieked, hide blistering but unbroken. Jon's pulse hammered. He signaled with mirror flash. Ballistae on Winters, Grace launched harpoon lines tipped with grapples. They snagged enemy hulks, reeled them close where Unsullied boarded via drawbridges engineered from scuttled scorpion frames. Tyrion's brainchild melding siege and naval battle. Grey Worm led first wave. Shield wall advancing across creaking planks that rocked with every swell. Spears punched through corsair leather. Discipline met frenzy and eclipsed it. Firepots hurled by corsairs splashed flaming oil, but Jon's men, clad in dampened hide, pressed inexorable. On port quarter, a corsair flagship broke line, aiming ram at Winter's Grace. Jon Zeit's tiller, as chief helmsman, faltered. Spinning wheel to yaw vessel sideways. The ram glanced. Scraping hull. Timbers screamed but held. Daenerys lifted hand. Drogon wheeled again, mouth gaping. But instead of a torrent he exhaled a cone of smoke and sparks, a warning breath that blackened mast without igniting the grain-filled belly below. The enemy captain balked. In that heartbeat Unsullied swarmed aboard. By dusk, corsair decks ran red into surf. Survivors knelt in chains once meant for others. Kalavos, of course, was not found. Rumor said his gilded pleasure bark had slipped from Lee's harbor days prior, bound for Myr. Drogon bore a shallow slash where a barbed spear had caught soft membrane. In the quiet that followed the battle, Jon climbed to the dragon's shoulder, cleaning wound with seawater while Daenerys murmured in Valyrian, her touch soothing. Drogon's eye narrowed in pleasure despite pain, a seismic purr vibrating the deck. He's never taken wound for me before, Jon said. He answered your need, Daenerys replied, tying final knot in bandage of woven silk. Wind tangled her hair. She brushed it back and smiled faintly. As I do. Later, as sailors sang low shanties of victory, Daenerys stood at stern with Jon, stars blooming overhead. She pressed his palm to her lower stomach, where a curious warmth lingered. I believe a dragon stirs here, she whispered. Jon's eyes widened. Words fled him. He bent, kissed her brow, then her stomach. In that fragile hush amid salted air and tar, the world outside their entangled destinies seemed small. Back in King's Landing, the small council thrilled at news. Corsair threat broken. Grain routes safer. Morale soaring. Yet Varys, gliding between archives like a wary heron, laid parchment before Sansa and Tyrion. The bank's quills scratch on, he sighed. They buy silence in alleys, fund ink blots of treachery we cannot track. Kalavos eludes net. He fosters discontent among Tyrell cousins, red wine traders, even whispers across Dorne's fractured courts. Then, Sansa, hair braided with northern beads of bone, scanned the scrolls. We've bled enough to feed their greed. My brother must know. She touched Raven Perch window. But let him savor his victory first. No monarch should ride next battle on the same breath as the last. Tyrion lifted cup. Wisdom from Winterfell. Let us toast to brief respites. Across the hall, Ser Brienne sparred recruits. Steel clanging against training shields. Podrick kept pace, sweat flying. Brienne paused to wipe brow, watching horizon where dragons might appear any moment. She feared little, yet politics. She knew wielded blades unseen by armor. 7 weeks passed. Winter crept south once more. Slow, inexorable. In Riverland's hamlets, folk pressed rushlight to frost thick parchment, and scrawled thanks that grain returned, though tight measurement. In old towns, starry-sapped, blue-robed acolytes bowed before gilded depiction of the mother, and murmured uneasy prayers that holy flames tempered wild ones. From Pentos, merchants carried word of Calavos forging alliance with Mirish luminaries, a guild of glassmakers rumored to craft mirrors that bent sunlight into deathlance. Jon and Daenerys convened a summit at Dragonstone. Attendants included Sansa, newly arrived by galley; Davos, wind-burned from sea; Tyrion, clutching a ledger; and Bran, his presence carried by ravens rather than wheels, eyes inhabiting black bird perched on trellis. Arya, Gendry, and Grey Worm stood sentinel. Sansa spoke first. "The bank may never bear arms itself, but it hires those with plenty. The Illuminaries create lenses. Calavos funds them. Tyrosh lends galleys. They plan a sunfire weapon to blind dragons mid-flight. Nay, reflect heat so intense scale cracks," Tyrion added, lips pinched. "I've read treatises. They're flawed but not impossible." Daenerys clasped hands over belly. "Secret still to most. Then we fight shadow with shadow. Strike before lens aligns with sun." She turned to Bran's raven. "Where is he?" Bran's voice echoed in the bird's caw, uncanny. "On the Isle of Merwater, west of Myre, where cliffs glow at dawn. He meets guildmasters under pretense of festival. 5 days hence they test the mirror." "Menmishau." Jon rose. "We leave tonight." He looked upon Daenerys, concern flickering. "But you?" She held his gaze. "We fly together or not at all." Sansa stepped in. "I go as envoy. Northern trade with Myre remains. Let me pass as diplomat, gain entry while you circle above." Bran's raven croaked assent. Plan set. 3 days' voyage to Myrewater passed in hush of mounting stakes. Sansa's vessel, the Silver Weir, bore northern livery disguised under tarcloth. Below deck, Arya hid among barrels. Above, Davos commanded. Dragons flew high, concealed by night journeys and dawn climbs that rode sun glare. On arrival eve, Myrewater's festival lanterns dotted cliffs like rainbow constellation. Glass spires rose along shore, scaffolds webbed around a half-built tower, whose crown housed a dish the breadth of a ballroom, layered with mirrored petals. Workers hammered through night. Torchlight flickered off facets, sending beams across surf. Sansa disembarked with retinue of 4. Brian, Podrick, a master of trade, and a lanky scribe, Arya disguised with false beard. They requested audience with Guildmaster Relleno, offering northern furs and fine vale wines as tokens. Guildhall doors opened onto gleaming corridors. Sun-shaped chandeliers refracted lamplight into kaleidoscope. Relleno greeted them, paunch jiggling. Rings aplenty. Behind his smile flickered greed. He escorted visitors to terrace overlooking tower construction. "Marvelous, is it not?" he puffed. "Parabolic geometry harnessing dawn itself." Brienne studied the dish, brow furrowed. "And to what purpose?" she asked. "Why, to light harbors," Relleno lied smoothly. "To magnify dawn for sailors." Sansa feigned admiration, though chill crawled her spine. She caught Arya's subtle nod. Workmen below stowed crates marked with sigil of broken chain. Evidence stacked. Night deepened. Relleno hosted lavish feast. Dueling dancers twirled with glass scimitars. Flute music swelled. Sansa pretended tipsy, coaxing Relleno's vanity. He boasted of Calavos arriving by morrow's dawn to witness first ignition. "A golden blade to sever dragons," he slurred, not noticing Arya's eyes narrow. Meanwhile, high above cloud cover, Drogon and Rhaegal circled. Jon counted heartbeats, waiting for Arya's prearranged signal. 3 lantern flashes. It came nearing midnight. He guided Drogon into steady descent toward seaward flank of cliffs. On ground, Arya slipped from banquet to tool shed near dish tower. Brienne blocked corridor with casual conversation for approaching guards. Arya unpacked small clay spheres filled with wildfire. Gifts smuggled courtesy of King's Landing alchemists. She wedged them around hinge brackets that allowed mirror petals to fold, each sealed with pitch. At first pink leak of dawn, bells rang announcing Kalavas approaching galley. Work crews swarm tower, readying mechanism. Lantern signals again. This time, a single flash. Jon whispered into wind. Drogon tilted, wings cupping cold air. Descent became stoop. Rhaegal followed, sunlight glancing off green scale. The galley, gilded prow slicing calm surf, carried Kalavos beneath canopy of red silk. He stepped to forecastle, adjusting gemstone-laden circlet, gaze greedy upon tower. He raised spyglass. Saw, not sunbeam, but dragon's silhouette blotting sun. Panic, cracked, deck, discipline. Gunners scrambled for scorpions. Sailors tripped over coil lines. Above, Drogon inhaled. Instead of full flame, he loosed narrow lance aimed at waterline. Steam geysered. Hull timbers shrieked. The galley reeled. On cliff, engineers yanked levers. Mirror pedals lifted, locking into dish. Sun-cresting horizon struck glass, funneling concentrated ray toward ascending dragons. Arya lit long fuse, dipped in oil thick as molasses, retreated down rope ladder. Ray exploded outward, blinding bar of light slicing early haze. It missed Drogon by lengths, but seared a path across sky like second sunrise. Rhaegal banked. Ray tracked slowly on pivot. Jon felt heat even at distance like furnace door ajar. Then wildfire charges ignited. Tower joints ruptured with green roar. Mirror petals quivered. Collapsed inward. Sunbeam shattered into prisms that sprayed harmless light. Fragments fell, skewering sand. Kalavos stared, slack-jawed, spyglass dangling. Drogon dove, snatching it from inexorable gravity. He roared so close that Kalavos dropped to deck, cowering. Unsullied skiffs rode from Sansa's hidden support ships, boarding crippled galley. By mid-morning, Guildmaster R'hllor knelt in broken plaza, wrists bound by stark wolf-head manacles. Kalavos, pale as chalk, offered coin for clemency. Sansa merely shook head. Debt pays in service, she pronounced. You will restore villages burned by your raiders, not with gold, but with your mirrored art. The dawn you sought to weaponize shall illuminate fields and sick houses. Kalavos spat. Daenerys landed nearby. Dust swirled at impact. She approached him, Drogon looming behind. The Iron Bank values return on investment. She told him gently, I will send them ledgers of all you owe. The coin you pledged, the ships you lost, the lives you bartered. They will reclaim interest upon you. She glanced to Unsullied, who escorted Kalavos, white-faced, toward prison galley. Above, mirror shards littered beach, thousands of glittering scales catching sunlight. Children from nearby fishing shacks wandered wide-eyed, pocketing fragments. Jon watched them, then knelt to one small girl clutching a shard. May it brighten your hearth, he said, ruffling her tangled hair. She ran off giggling, diamond of dawn in hand. Weeks lengthened into deep midwinter. Snow dusted King's Landing's rooftops, a rare frosting that drew laughter from children who had never seen such before. In Red Keep's nursery, Queen Daenerys sat near brazier, small bundle cradled in arms, cheeks flushed with lamps and quiet awe. A boy, black hair dusted with silver at the temples. A whisper of both parents. Bran had foretold him. Aemon, for the maester who once taught men dragons could be servants of peace as well as war. Jon lingered at door, cloak still spangled with snowflakes. He watched mother and son, heart swelling beyond breastplate. When Daenerys lifted gaze, tears rimmed lashes. He sleeps only when the fire crackles, she whispered. Our tiny dragon. Across the city, bells rang not for war, but for first harvest delivery of the season. Early thanks to dragon-warmed glasshouses, erected with Cohor steel, and Myrish mirrors, repurposed under R'hllor's forced artistry. Baskets of greens reached flea bottom. Small folk cheered the two-headed dragon as symbol of hearth rather than sword. Yet shadows persisted. Varys reported sightings of faceless assassins slipping from Bravos. Tyrion produced sealed missive. Rumor of a Blackfire pretender rising in stepstones. promising pure dragon blood to supplant half-wolf spawns. Sansa grimaced at phrase. Jon crushed letter into ember. Arya volunteered to chase the whispers at root. She left Winterfell one moonless dawn, riding north to White Harbor to board ship disguised as deckhand. She carried list of names gleaned from Rolanos ledgers, clients who bought green crystals. In her belt pouch lay a single coin of Bravos iron. Its pale face reminded her of death owed. Spring's first crocus poked through snowfall outside Winterfell, when Bran summoned council. Ravens perched in Godswood, his conduit. Through their chorus he described dream of great maw. Shadows swirling teeth of obsidian swallowing red star. Targaryen comet returned, but twisted green, trailing smoke. Chaos seeks womb of volcano, he warned. Where dragon eggs, thought turned to stone. Quicken under foul rites. His message reached Dragonstone at dawn. Daenerys stood upon carved balcony overlooking Blackwater Bay, hair tumbling in wind. She rocked Aemon, gaze distant upon horizon. They will never stop, she murmured. Jon joined, arms encircling her, infant between. He kissed her temple. Neither will we. Grey Worm entered with salute. Ship's ready. Jon pressed finger to child's hand, tiny fist latched tight. He will know peace, Jon vowed. Drogon bellowed outside, wings stirring thunder. Rhaegal answered from spire of rookery. The realm below breathed uneasily, yet seeds planted by unity had sprouted. Roads clear, markets humming, winter stores strong. People began carving twin dragons atop doorframes as ward against famine. Lullabies carried names of Wolf Queen, Dragon King, and Babe with midnight starlight in hair. On the eve of their next departure, destination shrouded, though rumor whispered of volcanoes north of Valyria, Sansa visited the nursery. She watched Aemon sleeping. A finger curled around red ribbon that once bound Lyanna Stark's braid. Sansa touched the downy head, then looked to Daenerys. Guard what cannot be forged anew, she said somberly. Your example spares not only crowns but hearths. Daenerys nodded, eyes soft. He is the realm we build. In yard below, smiths hammered new sigil into shield bosses. 3 forms entwined now. The black dragon, the white wolf, and a hatchling of silver flame. Steel sparked bright under morning sun, echoing promise across stone. The voyage south took them over smoking plumes of Valyrian ruins. Clouds of volcanic ash swirled like ghosts. Drogon's wings beat steady. Rhaegal scouted flanks. On a desolate isle, where glass rivers cut obsidian cliffs, they found cultists chanting over pits of magma, coaxing petrified eggs with crystal lattices. The air shimmered with heat and madness. Battle erupted. Fierce, desperate. At climax, Daenerys lifted an egg mottled black-red, its surface pulsing with malignant life. She cradled it, tears streaming, whispering lullaby once sung to dragons birthed in love, not hate. The egg quieted. Lines faded. Heartbeat ceased. She placed it into magma, letting natural flame reclaim unnatural spark. Lightning of obsidian shards flashed, the crystal network imploding. Cultists screamed as ground cracked. Jon hauled Daenerys onto Drogon's back, just as Island belched column of fire. They soared, ash swirling like funeral confetti. Behind them, volcano collapsed inward. Sealing womb of nightmares. Exhausted, they landed on drift of black sand, dragons coiling protectively. Jon wrapped arms around Daenerys, head bowed against her shoulder. For a long time they held silence. Finally she whispered, "Some eggs must never hatch." He nodded, kissing tear-tracked cheek. Because our world is no longer starved for wonder. Years cascaded like petals on wind. The realm, battered yet unbowed, slowly accepted peace as habit rather than fluke. Grain wagons rolled under banners of intertwined beasts. Children cheered when dragons shadowed fields, yet burned only lightning storms. Clearing cloud for sun, Aemon grew sturdy, toddling between ghosts' patient paws and Drogon's watchful perimeter. At 6, he climbed into Rhaegal's curled claw, giggling as Giant Eye regarded him with gentle bemusement. Old threats flickered. Black fire plot extinguished by Arya's steady blade. Iron Bank renegotiated terms when Tycho Nestoris, seeing prosperity hold, forged alliance underwriting infrastructure. Kalavos languished in Bravos' debtor's pit, paying penance stitching sails for orphan sloops. The broken chain cult, bereft of crystal stores and dragon fear, dwindled to myth whispered in gutter alleys. One autumn, as confluence of comet shards streaked on, Bran visited in body, escorted by Gendry's carriage. He met Aemon beneath Winterfell's weirwood, where leaves blazed red gold. "Stones remember," he told the boy, placing tiny carved figurine of wolf dragon in his palm. "And rivers sing what stones forget. Carry both." Aemon looked up, eyes silver gray. "I will," he said solemnly. Bran smiled, distant thunder of raven wings echoing in his glance. When Jon and Daenerys at last returned to that same godswood where they had wed, snowflakes drifted lazy, catching in Jon's grizzled beard. Decades had painted streaks of winter through his hair, etched lines at Daenerys' eyes, but strength radiated from them. Time had tempered, not dulled. They knelt before ancient face, offering silent thanks. Drogon rested beyond walls now reinforced with ironwood beams, wings half furled, breath slow. Rhaegal perched atop tower, keeping vigil. Aemon, now man grown and rider of Rhaegal, stood at father's side. On his cloak shimmered brooch of combined sigils, twin dragons flanking direwolf rampant. Beside him, sister Rhaena, pale as moonlit flame, carried ledger ready to tally harvests for equitable tax. Daenerys rose, snow swirling like blossoming white roses. She took Jon's hand. Peace was never the dream, she said softly. The dream was life, and life we have given. Jon squeezed, warmth radiating. And we'll keep giving, so long as winter returns and we face it together. Somewhere in distance, bells tolled. No alarm, but call to evening feast. The realm hungered, not for war songs but for bread. Stories, family. They walked hand in hand toward hall lights, boots crunching snow. Overhead, dragons shifted, great wings creating blessed wind that brushed treetops and stirred banners, whispering a legacy carved not by conquest or fear, but by hearts that chose each dawn to temper fire with mercy and steel with hope. And the world, for the first time in living memory, dared to believe the lullaby might last. Okay. Snowmelt pooled in mirror-still hollows along the King's Road, reflecting a pale spring sky streaked with lavender clouds. Southbound wagons passed northbound drovers, their wheels hushing through damp ruts, as though the land itself conspired to keep the world breathing in soft, even cadences. Near Moat Cailin, where moss-cloaked stones marked graves older than memory, 3 riders halted at a rise to survey the way ahead. Aemon Targaryen Stark pushed back his hood. Dark hair wind-whipped against silvered temples that caught the day's last light. Rhaena rode to his right, pale braids fluttering like twin streamers, while Sir Podrick Payne, now captain of the Roses, sworn blade to Winterfell, watched the horizon with quiet patience. "We make White Harbor before moonrise," Podrick said, reins coiling about his gauntlet. Aemon nodded. "And from there, the narrow sea." He spoke with his father's low cadence and his mother's clipped clarity. A voice shaped by 2 halves of the realm and disciplined by years astride Rhaegal's broad back. "Uncle Gendry's ravens say the Braavosi envoy already waits on Dragonstone. Best we outpace rumor." Rhaena bent forward to soothe her mare. "Braavos seeks renewal of the free port treaty, but Mother fears ciphers hidden in their scrolls, clauses pressed like pins to bleed us should we stumble." She glanced at her brother with a half-smile. "She trusts you to read every line." "What eyes cannot find," Aemon answered, patting the dragonbone tube at his saddle. "Ink will confess when heated. Master Samwell's newest trick." A wry laugh escaped Podrick. "Let's hope words hide in letters, not daggers." He spurred his horse gently, and the small company descended into twilight. White Harbor lay pearl-gray beneath a half-grown moon. Lanterns lined the Manderley Quay, their warm glows mirrored in calm water. Aemon's banner, A direwolf wrapped by twin dragons drew cheers from harbor folk. Fisherwomen dipped curtsies. Children waved carved wooden dragons whose paint had already flaked from play. The riders left steeds with stable hands and crossed the new stone breakwater to the Sea Wolf, a sleek caravel trimmed in black and crimson. Captain Willa Manderley greeted them amid coiled ropes. "Wind favors east," she said. "But squalls gather off Sisterton. Sea salt brined every word. We may skirt them if we angle wide." "We trust your helm," Rhaena replied. She clasped Willa's forearm in greeting, equal to equal, before following Aemon below. At dawn, sails bellied with a gust that smelled of open sea and far-off storms. The Sea Wolf cut across rippling silver, leaving a foamy braid. Above, gulls wheeled. Aemon stood at prow, cloak snapping, Rhaena beside him humming ballads of the north. Somewhere over Cloudbank, Rhaegal shadowed their wake, wings tipped with rose-gold sun. By second sundown, Sisterton's storms crested into view, ink spills on the sky. Willa ordered reefed canvas, but a rogue squall still struck stern on, driving rain like pebble shot. Lightning danced, thunder growled close on its heels. Rhaegal descended to ride the gale, banking to shield mast from worst gusts. Sheets of light seared across his flank, revealing sky-high columns of vapor that writhed like leviathans. Amid the barrage, Aemon caught a flash of hull far to lee. A black galley with no lights, prow carved as open maudot. Its sails looked tarred, the canvas slick and shuddering. Each boom of lightning showed a figure at its forecastle, iron mask gleaming, single green crystal set into its brow. He felt a chill that had nothing to do with wind. "Rhaena, do you see?" She followed his gaze. "Broken chain," she hissed. Willa shouted orders. Sea Wolf heeled, trying to outrun pursuit. But the dark galley's oars bit foam, gaining. On deck, masked sailors fitted crossbow cranks to heavy bolts whose heads glowed faint emerald, the same ominous luminescence Arya Stark once described before she vanished across the sunset sea. Rhaegal's shriek cut the tempest. He dropped, tail smashing waves into walls that drenched the enemy prow. Bolts loosed. Streaks of green. But they missed the dragon by yards. Rhaena drew Valyrian dagger from belt. "Brother." "Not yet," Aemon said, mind racing. Sea Wolf's hold carried barrels of whale oil for King's Landing's refuge lamps. If those were pierced, Rhaena understood, eyes widening. "We must not let flame near." She whistled high, 3 beats. Rhaegal banked away from the galley, drawing fire. Arbalests clattered, bolts hissed. One clipped wing vein, eliciting a roar, but Rhaegal righted, wheeling leeward. On Sea Wolf's deck, Podrick loosed rope ballista newly fitted by Gendry's smiths. The bolt carried a chain that unspooled like silver serpent, weighted at end with folding spine anchor. It arced across squall and bit into galley's quarterdeck rail. Crew hauled, winching slack. Rain sluiced, ropes groaned. When tension peaked, Willa barked. "Haul a beam?" Sea Wolf yawed. The chain tore timber free, spinning the galley broadside into cresting swell. Oars snapped. Masked sailors tumbled. Lightning speared masttop. It shattered with concussive boom. A ribbon of fire raced rigging. Green at first, then ordinary yellow as emerald coating burned off. Oil-slick deck. Figures scrambled to douse. Rhaegal seized the moment. He swooped low, wings hammering gale. Instead of flame, he exhaled ash-heated gust, enough to smother torches and spray water skyward. The galley wallowed. Rudder cracked. Wave after wave pounded hull until planks buckled. Masked figures vanished beneath black water. Silence returned in ragged breaths and lapping drizzle. Willa crossed chest in sailor's prayer. Gods turn their eyes. She murmured. Rhaena tended Rhaegal's wing with cloth strips, soaked in healing tincture. Aemon studied the floating mask of iron and crystal bobbing among debris, then speared it on boathook, tipping it into a bucket of seawater where green glow slowly faded. Dragonstone greeted them with skies cleared to jewel blue. fortress ridges like black knives against horizon. Rhaegal glided to rookery perch, while the sea wolf berthed under volcanic bluff. Daenerys waited at dock in riding leathers, Jon beside her, ghost panting at heel. Lines etched by peacetime, governance did little to blunt their vitality. Their presence still anchored the isle as surely as living stone. Aemon disembarked, bowed. Daenerys embraced him, then Rhaena. I felt Rhaegal's pain across the bond. She said quietly, "He heals already, but I fear what's left of the chain thrashes in last coils." Jon nodded at the bucket, now bearing inert mask. Its gem glimmered weakly. "A dying candle still burns," he said. "We must snuff it." Inside the painted hall, restored since days when storm and war scarred its grand table, the high priest of the many-fingered hand awaited. Toril of Braavos, lean, eyes sharp as stiletto. He bowed low to queens and king. "I carry goodwill of the Sea Lord," he began. "Braavos pledges mutual defense pact, but seeks reaffirmation of free passages and interest on outstanding compensation for Valyrian shipping lost to wild dragon flights." Tyrion, older now, hair silver thread among blonde, leaned over ledger. Compensation was settled in grains 3 winters back. Toril smiled thin. "Our scribes found variation in weight conversions." Daenerys' answering smile held harder angles. "Then my dragons will escort your next grain fleet, weigh each bag upon arrival, and if discrepancy remains, my treasury shall pay difference in silver scales, stamped with direwolf and dragon. Will that satisfaction quell further quill scratching?" Toril's throat bobbed. "Indeed, your grace." Paperwork progressed, each clause lanced of hidden barbs by Aemon's keen eye. As ink dried, Samwell Tarly arrived bearing tube, bound in scarlet. "Message from Old Town," he puffed. "Archmaester Illifer's star reader predicts rift in heaven next moon. A shard of the long-ago comet returns, but its tail displays sickly green." Daenerys and Jon exchanged glance. Aemon's jaw tightened. Storm shadows of that broken chain mask swam back into mind. "Where will it fall?" Daenerys asked. "Archmaester can't determine," Samwell admitted. "But calculations point to Shivering Sea, north by northwest of Skagos." Jon gazed northward as if seeing through walls. Beyond the old wall ruins, frozen water, few souls. Yet memory of White Walker wars haunted silence. "We ride anyway." Daenerys placed hand over his. "Together," she said, the vow that had shaped decades. Within a sennight, Winterfell's courtyards bustled. Rhaegal's wing mended, Drogon impatient to fly. Gendry unveiled new saddles, alloy of tempered steel ribs and supple wyvern hide, lighter for long range. He and Arya, dusty from distant roads, shared proud grin. Arya had returned with tidings. Remaining cult priests chased to the far north, searching for skystones said to bind dead stars and living fire. Sansa, hair silvered like hoarfrost yet gaze sharp, stood on battlements. She hugged Daenerys, then rested forehead to Jon's. "Bring our children home," she whispered. "The realm still needs its guiding lanterns." Below, a crowd gathered. Northerners, Vale Knights, Dothraki settlers, who now tilled river valleys, free folk who migrated south for trade. They cheered as riders mounted dragons. Jon climbed behind Daenerys on Drogon, Aemon astride Rhaegal, Rhaena on young Nyssa, offspring of Rhaegal, and a wild she-dragon discovered near Goldtown Cliffs. Nyssa's scales shone iridescent teal. She warbled excited to follow elders. Dawn painted snowfields in rose and gold as dragons rose. Ghost howled farewell. Winterfell's bells tolled. Wind parted before beating wings. The world below fell away to white quilt, dotted by frost-black trees. They crossed the walls, collapsed ruin by midday. Beyond lay tundra, vast and empty, but not silent. Aurora crackled overhead in ghostly banners, and wind moaned across ice flats. Rhaena gasped, pointing eastward where ocean met land. Sea frozen into labyrinth of jagged shelves. In center, a smoking crater fumed. New, rim glowing faint emerald even under sun shore. Dragons circled low. Heat shimmered above fissures, where starstone fragments hissed against snow. Here and there, clusters of green crystals grew like malign flowers, pulsing slowly. At crater core lay half-buried meteor, larger than a grand hall. Its skin cracked, revealing molten heart. Aemon's blood tingled. Rhaegal snarled unease. Drogon banked, dropping to level ground. The riders dismounted, boots crunching crust. Frost steam drifted about their ankles. Jon approached Meteor, long claw drawn though blade steamed from ambient heat. Within cracks, he glimpsed glassy lining throbbing with same sickly light that once emboldened broken chain weaponry. Memory of obsidian teeth, swallowing red star flashed. They sought this. Daenerys extended senses, feeling thrum resonate in her bones. Echo of dragon song but crooked. A stone egg that will not hatch, she murmured. Yet, if twisted to purpose, it might poison living flame. Rhaena knelt, palms over fractured rim. Nyssa brayed softly. It sings of hunger, Rhaena whispered. A call like winter wind through hollow bones. From Ice Ridge arose sudden figures, cloaked shapes armored in patchwork furs, faces masked in crystal visors. Leaders of fractured cult, driven to hear. At their center, strode woman half lost to legend. Mask Mother revived, flesh veined with amber lines. She lifted staff grown from meteor shard. Children of false dragon, she cried, voice echoing across frozen sea. Kneel before star that predates your petty fire. Her followers brandished spears tipped with meteoric glass. Each blade glowed inner green. Jon stepped forward. Let star rest. The world chooses life. Life is cinder, she spat. Starfire remakes. Valyria broke sky, we mend it. She slammed staff to ice. Crystals along fissures flared. From pits crawled new creatures, wyverlings wrought of frozen seawater and glass shards, eyes burning lime. They skittered on many limbs, hissing. Battle erupted. Drogon's roar shook heaven. He released torrent of flame so white it cracked air. Wyverlings shrieked. Ice turned to steam. Creatures blistering, but green cores within them resisted, reforming edges. Rhaegal swept tail, smashing a dozen. Nyssa darted, agile, biting through brittle bodies. Aemon and Rhaena fought on foot, Valyrian steel flashing. Each strike shattered crystal beasts, sending shards spinning. Arya and Gendry appeared from dragon saddle rigging, hidden until now, springing into fray, ghost blades, dancing cruel ballet. Mask Mother raised staff. Beam of green speared Drogon's shoulder, searing scale. He roared pain. Daenerys felt it lance her spirit. She vaulted onto Meteor, sprinting along ridge as heat scorched souls. Closing distance, she hurled dagger toward staff. But Amber Aura deflected. Jon joined, Longclaw parrying staff strike. Each impact rang with thunder. Mask Mother countered with unnatural speed, eyes gleaming void. Around them ice cracked, fissures widened. Aemon shouted warning. Meteor's molten heart pulsed dangerously, lava meeting sea below. Rhaena closed eyes, reaching with mind beyond noise. She called Nyssa, Drogon, Rhaegal to converge. 3 dragons raised throats in harmony, emitting not flame but resonant roar. Deep chord that vibrated meteor. Cracks widened, shards groaning as if recoiling from pure dragon song. Mask Mother staggered. Jon pressed, blade shearing lines across her staff. Daenerys seized broken halves, channeling dragon song through them. Lightning of sound burst outward, exploding crystals. Cultists clutched ears. Wyverlings crumbled into salt and glass. A final rupture. Split ground. Meteor's core ruptured, gushing molten rock. Mask Mother pitched backward into fiery chasm. Scream lost in steam. Ice plain erupted. Geysers flung fragments skyward. Nyssa swooped, wings shielding Rhaena and Aemon from scorching debris. Drogon lifted Jon and Daenerys with foreclaw. Rhaegal bore Arya and Gendry away. Dragons soared above collapsing shelf as sea swallowed crater. Boiling water hissed, then stilled, surface frosting again with white lace. High above, Aurora shimmered brighter. color shifting from green to gold. As if stars' corruption bled away, northern lights regained ancient glow. They landed upon sturdy flow miles distant. Cold bit cheeks, but spirits soared warm. Jon embraced Daenerys as Drogon's wound smoked and knitted beneath salve Rhaena applied. Aemon clasped Arya's arm, gratitude shining. Daenerys looked south, as though eyes pierced horizon to Winterfell's hearths. "It ends," she whispered. Jon rested forehead to hers. "Until men forget." Yet, hope glimmered. Rhaena approached with Nyssa nuzzling her shoulder. She held piece of meteor no bigger than apple, its glow faint and benign. "Dulled," she said. "Broken chain truly snapped." She cast it into sea, where it vanished beneath slush. Aemon laughed, shoulders shedding weight. "Perhaps skies will rain only snow and summer rain henceforth." Arya sheathed blade. "And if not, we'll be waiting." Word of victory traveled with speed of dragon wings. In King's Landing, bells rang. Braavosi envoy signed pact free of coercion. In Old Town, archmaesters revised prognostications, noting celestial wound healed. Dothraki and Crownlands raced horses under clear sky, shouting praise to sky soldiers. Free folk lit fires along shattered wall, singing of snow dragons guarding dawn. Winter eased to gentle hush. Harvest soared. Isles of stepstones, cleansed of corsairs, blossomed into trade hubs. Cohor smiths forged plowshares gilded with star metal inlay, a reminder that stones from sky should feed, not feud. Years rolled. Jon and Daenerys stepped further back, guiding through letters, counsel, and story. Aemon took mantle Prince Regent. Rhaena steered Council of Seeds, ensuring grain roots unmarred by greed. Dragons nested in new sanctuaries along Blackwater Rush, warming citrus groves so small folk tasted fruit once foreign. On quiet evening, Jon walked Winterfell's Godswood with Ghost, now slowed by gray muzzle. Snowflakes drifted, catching lamplight. He knelt at Weirwood, whispering thanks to Father who raised him Stark, and Mother who gave him Targaryen flame. Behind, Daenerys approached, hair woven with threads of silver and ash. "Bran dreams peaceful things these days," she said, kneeling. "Wolves sleeping in tall grass, dragons sunning on stone. Children who know only stories of war, not wounds." She smiled, slight and wondrous. Jon wrapped cloak about them both. "Then tale we forged endures." He looked skyward, where veil of dusk shimmered faint aurora of gentle gold. "And the two-headed dragon sleeps yet, watches." Daenerys rested head on his shoulder. "Let them dream then, and let the world dream with them." Their breaths mingled, warm against winter air, while high above, Rhaegal and Nyssa soared lazy circles, nonchalant wardens of a realm at rest, their silhouettes inked upon paling stars. As final snows melted that spring, a council of children gathered on Widow's Watch to hear Granny Nan's successor recite legends beside crackling hearth. They sat wide-eyed, while she spoke of days when dragons roared and wolves howled, but also of nights when lullabies of peace drifted through stone halls. "And how did the wars end, Nanara?" a freckled boy asked, chin on knees. Nanara smiled, eyes crinkling. "They ended each dawn when hearts chose love over fear. When a queen gave a dragon as gift to a king she loved, and together they forged a crown with 2 heads and 1 heart." The children gasped, wonder bright. Outside, morning light spilled across meadow dotted with blue winter roses, and distant wing beats, soft as lullaby drums, echoed a promise that had become truth. Kay. Anemones shimmered in shallow surf, where driftmarks coral shoals rose like the bones of forgotten leviathans, their branching fingers cupping tides scented with kelp and sun-fat salt. The gulls had gone quiet, beneath a pristine morning sky, driven south to nest on gentler cliffs, and in their place small dragonettes wheeled, hatchlings of Nyssa and a stray bronze male from the stepstones, their sleek bodies no longer than seals yet already laced with the promise of furnace hearts. They shrieked delight as they dipped toward fish flashing silver just beneath the waves, wings stirring jeweled spray that glittered like dew on glass. Prince Aemon stood knee-deep in water, the hue of tarnished steel, sand cool between his toes. He wore little more than linen trousers rolled to calf, and a sleeveless jerkin of pale dowskin, that bared arms scarred by training in war, but now corded with the gentler muscle of peace. A breeze lifted the strands of black and silver hair at his temples, carrying distant scents. Tar from the shipyards resurrected upon the island's lee side. Sweet smoke from fishing huts where driftwood cured the day's first catch. Roasting spiced barley in earthen ovens for the day's midday meal. Behind him, new palisades rose where Valyrian castles once threatened to collapse into sea. The ancient estate thrummed again with life, its stone warmed by the low murmur of hammer and song. Children's laughter chasing across battlements. Rhaena approached from the dune path, hem of her sea-green dress brushing the sand. She bore parchment in one hand, its wax broken, and her expression, so often bright with quick humor, softened to a sober light as she stepped into tide. Spray leapt over her boots, but she scarcely noticed, gaze fixed upon her brother. Aemon saw her reflection in his own mind first. The twin bond forged in blood and flame, more potent than any mirrored water. Before he turned and caught her shadow sliding across the foam. Ravens. His voice carried the calm of coastal dawn, yet something in it sharpened like sunlight on a blade. "From Bravos again," Rhaena said, holding the parchment so the wind would not snatch it. "New Sea Lord claims pirates drift north of IB, wearing flags of House Triarch, vultures smelling rumor that our Coast Guard grows complacent." Aemon accepted the scroll. Wax bore Bravos' swirling tides encircling the Titan. Beneath, the quick scrawl of Toril, the envoy-turned-friend who spent half his time slipping coded warnings between pleasantries. Aemon skimmed lines that bristled with feigned courtesy yet revealed stark intent. 4 warhulks, mercenaries of disputed fealty, had sailed 3 days past from Quahor's outlying docks, carrying holdfast ballista reshod for Dragon's boat. Their destination unknown, but sailcloth painted sea blue to blend with horizon. "They test us," Aemon murmured when he finished. "And they test the depth of their own courage." Rhaena's eyes, pale lilac, tracked a hatchling's playful dive. "Mother will call them fools. Father will say fools are dangerous when they gather shame. They must be met before they can craft legend of stolen dragons." Aemon folded the missive. "We intercept quietly. Rhaegal can shadow from cloud. Nissa's children act as swift spies. Curiosity is their nature." He paused, noting her still stance. "You are uneasy." "I dreamed," she answered, looking past crags where early sunlight jeweled jagged edges. Off, a woman in red scales standing upon a shore of broken mirrors. Each wave carried a face. "Some I've yet born. She told me tides obey moons and—" Rhaena exhaled, shaking off reverie. "I do not know if it warns or weeps." Aemon touched her shoulder. "Squeeze gentle. Dreams once carved the future of our house, but I have learned they also remember our fears. We will face either path at dawn." "Da." He offered an arm. They walked up the slope, where Moran Aemon's latest squire, a stalwart boy of mixed Dornish and Crownlands blood, held Rhaena's riding boots. Moran bowed, freckles bright against sun-browned cheeks. "Nissa drafted a catch," he exclaimed. "She spit at the sea and roasted 3 silverbacks for breakfast. The harbor stinks, but the dockhands are grateful." Aemon laughed, patting the boy's shoulder. "Feed the scales, and the realm stays fed." Moran died all. "Tell cook I want nothing wasted. The bones serve as fine broth and the fins char to crisps." The boy scampered off, energized by purpose. They reached the courtyard where banners snapped crisp in the wind, twin dragons twisting around direwolf rampant. Under an oak draped in sea salt lichen, Master Geron waited with fresh ink shining on spectacles. He extended another letter, this one sealed in sea-green wax. "From Old Town, Your Highness," he said. "Maester Samwell marks the comet's residue all but dissipated, but he writes of spectral lights over lice and strange tremors beneath the smoking sea. He suspects pockets of starstone still churn beneath waves. Aemon sighed. Then the world will always remind us wonders can turn harrow. He pocketed letter. We sail before midday. At Dragonstone, Daenerys paced the high gallery of the stone drum, her gait fluid but edged by disquiet. Wind coursed through open arches, fluttering parchment upon the central reading lectern. Beyond, Blackwater Bay shimmered where sun speared water with 1,000 mirrored shards. Drogon dozed on his perch above the slag-black yard, his mask casting flickering shade through the open ceiling grate. Smoke twined from his nostrils as he dreamt. When Daenerys reached the end of the balcony, she lingered, hand upon corroded merlon, gaze west, where glimmering sails prepared in neat rows. 15 swift cutters and 3 stout longships, rigged for speed. The fleet belonged to no crown admiralty, but to the new alliance of ports, a union of stormlanders, riverfolk, Bravosi brokers, and Dothraki seahorse captains, sworn to protect trade across the barking gulf. Jon joined her, quiet. He wore the dark, understated garb that had become his hallmark in later years. Charcoal doublet sewn with threads that caught faint glints, no ostentation beyond direwolf clasp at collar. Silver stippled his beard. "Eagle circles," he said, pointing where a green shadow banked high. "Aemon and Rhaena left driftmark in our past. They'll rendezvous mid-sea." "Thou." Daenerys nodded, but her shoulders remained taut. "The Iron Bank shakes old coffers," she said. "Every coin they slip kills a rumor of weakness within their walls. These pirate hulks, they reek of rented leverage." She faced Jon. "I fear a greater play. Not for dragons perhaps, but for our illusions. If they prove we cannot protect far coasts, small kingdoms will drift like broken ice." Jon placed a gloved hand atop hers. "Then we show them current yet flows. Not with massed armies or wildfire. With swift justice and open hand after." He drew her closer. "And should swift justice fail, Drogon will remind them stone still melts." A small chuckle escaped her, a sound like nearly spent flint. She pressed a kiss to his cheek before descending spiral stairs to the yard. Below, Grey Worm greeted them. Though age creased his brow, his posture remained as straight as the spears his men still polished each dawn. He carried new shield design, an interlocking pattern of wolf and dragon scales, forged from starstone tempered during the comet's final burn. "Unsullied stand ready," he said, saluting. Jon shook his head. "No full legion. We send one company with Aemon, purely to observe and record. Pirates will fear the dragons more than spears. Our strength is knowing when not to bleed." "Aemon." Grey Worm inclined head, and though tone unchanged, pride shone in his dark eyes. He had spent decades unlearning a life of constant war, and each restrained order validated the peace purchased in blood. The sea north-northeast of IB was a place maps forgot, where fog swallowed horizon and silent flows cracked like distant drums. Here gulls gave way to gray shearjaws, and the occasional creaking song of a great white narwhal breaking surface. It was here, 3 mornings later, that Aemon sighted faint sails. His fleet, spread wide, cut oars to let morning mists obscure their approach. He stood atop Seawolf's forward castle, Rhaena beside him, spyglass trained. 4 hulks indeed, no flags flying, hulls black-tarred, spiked prows reinforced with braced timberwork. Oars rose and fell in perfect concert, unnatural for freebooters. On mid-deck of each vessel, Aemon made out the silhouette of large torsion bow. Ballista, they'd stolen Stormlander designs for rapid wind. But on foredeck, perched cylinders he'd not seen. Iron chimneys ringed by starglass plates, inside which sickly green glow pulsed like caged heartbeat. Rhaena inhaled. They harnessed meteor fragments into lances. Aemon lowered glass. "And if they strike dragon flesh, shards might spread infection of crystal." He clenched jaw. "We cannot allow even one shot." Rhaena's lips thinned. "We must break weapons before they know we are near." Seawolf's crew, Valyrian northern volunteers, free folk, even a handful of Qartheen exiles, gathered beneath command deck. Aemon addressed them. Those ships sail under no banner, but their weapons threaten every free shore. We will strike fast. Grapples to disable oars. Flame only upon iron houses, not full hulls. Grain and cloth innocents may dwell inside. Murmurs of affirmation rolled. He signaled Rhaegal, who vanished into overcast gloom. A horn sounded from starboard flank. Sir Larac's cutter, night-painted, slipping ahead. Grapple bolts twanged. Lines caught enemy ore banks, snapping rhythm, jerking vessels into disarray. At same instant, Rhaegal dove, releasing focused torrent onto nearest iron chimney. Starglass plates cracked, breaking the focusing lens. Contained glow spilled upward like expelled soul, then winked. Weapon neutralized. Alarm broke across pirate decks. They attempted to swing ballista, but masts had been trimmed for stealth, giving bolts limited arc. Rhaena loosed arrow lit with azure phosphorus. It struck rope coil soaked in pitch. Flame raced to aft castle. Seawolf closed, ran staving in stern quarter. Boarding planks slammed. Aemon leapt first, blade drawn. A slender bastard sword, forged of tempered star steel, named Dawnbreaker by driftmark priests. Its edge snagged nothing, parting flesh and chain with equal ease. Unsullied watchers kept counts, but did not join. Pirates soon realized they faced fewer swords than haunts of legend. Fear spread. Men dropped arms. On other hulks, similar scuffles ended quickly. Rhaegal's passes too fierce, and Seawolf's gambit cut rudder lines. By sun high, all 4 warships lay hobbled, sails stripped, weapons shattered. Prisoners, most sellswords from Volantis. Nelton rose. Among them the mastermind, Captain Barros Daenerys. Bastard out of Dorne, eyes pale as bleached bone. He stared unshaken when Aemon confronted him. "Coin," said Daenerys, as though answering unasked question. "Enough to buy a prince's ransom." "Whose purse?" Aemon asked. Daenerys smirked. "A purse that never empties, so long as kings fear debt. I do not speak names, they carve out tongues for less." Rhaena kneeled, retrieving a splinter of shattered chimney glass. She pressed its jagged edge against Daenerys' cheek, not cutting but letting him feel cold burn. "This is the tongue they'll carve next." Beads of sweat dotted his brow. He swallowed. Aceless broker out of Tyrosh, they wore velvet mask. Paid half up front. Balance after proof of dragon kill. Where now? Spectre's Rest, he breathed. An isle of stone north of Tall Trees Town. Aemon signaled sailors to bind Daenerys for lawful trial. Rhaena flicked shard overboard. Tall Trees Town. Ancient port of the Jogos Ni. Lay days further southeast, but Spectre's Rest was little more than volcanic ridge cloaked in rainforest canopy, seldom charted. The cutter Silken Arrow, lightly crewed, sailed with Nyssa scouting ahead while Rhaegal patrolled above. At dusk on the 3rd day, thin plumes of smoke wisped over treetops. Night birds shrilled. Rhaena, perched upon Nyssa's saddle high in canopy, spied torch clusters inside half-ruined fortress built of oily black stone, a style predating Old Kiss. Within courtyard, figures moved among braziers, heaving crates feathered with straw, a menagerie of weapons and glass vials brimming luminous green. At fortress center, a pavilion glowed lamplight through red silk walls. Rhaena caught faint music, lyres tuned minor key. She slipped from Nyssa's back to a branch thick with lichen and vines. Nyssa angled away to hide. Rhaena descended vine to parapet, silent as dew. Inside pavilion, 2 nobles reclined on cushioned bench. One slender in Myrish lace mask shaped like butterfly. The other broad, bald, wearing loose robe of golden thread. Between them a chessboard carved of onyx and mother of pearl displayed pieces shaped as dragons and stars. Servants refilled cups of honeyed wine. Rhaena stilled breath to catch words over churring insects. "Daenerys did not report," said the golden man, voice oily. "But if he fails, we still retain the final fang." He tapped chess piece. A dragon skull mottled green. Butterfly mask answered. Accent Tiroshi. The bright banks coil winds far. Crown grows dull, Its admiral's old. A public blow remains possible. We need only slay a hatchling and pin carcass on Wolf Dragon's gates. Rhaena's pulse quickened. Hatchlings roosted unguarded on Driftmark's western heights. Nisse, young. She backed up balcony, heart hammering. But a twig snapped. Silent to men. Thunder to courtyard sentries. A guard barked. Crossbow quarrel hissed. Rhaena pivoted beneath bolt. Let it pass. Then sprang. Dagger, slicing rope. She swung over parapet to outer berm, sprinting upslope. Alarm horns blared. Nyssa burst through canopy with roar. Rhaena vaulted into saddle as arrows whistled. A hornman loaded another, but Nyssa exhaled spark gout. Brief flame that seared arrow, cowing pursuit. High above, Rhaegal shrieked. Lights blossomed on fortress walls. Pale green flares streaked skyward, signaling unknown watchers. From hidden cove, sails emerged. 3 slim cruisers painted Tyroshi purple, making for open sea. Aemon, aboard Silken Arrow, saw signals and ordered pursuit. But wind failed. Enemy used lateen rigs to catch sliver breeze and widen gap toward northwest channels, leading to Basilisk Isles. Rhaegal could char them, but cargo of starglass risked sea contamination. Aemon gritted teeth, telling Messenger Raven to warn Dragonstone and Driftmark simultaneously. They would race pirates to Vale Straits. Drogon's longer wingspans would intercept quicker. At Driftmark, Daenerys received Raven amidst council session with Braavosi trade magisters. She left table mid-sentence, face cloaked in mounting storm. Jon followed to courtyard where Drogon crouched, tail thrashing. Maester Geron read message aloud. Grey Worm listened, jaw set. They aim for hatchlings, Daenerys hissed, scanning horizon beyond Bay Dai Tai Tuol. She kissed Jon fiercely, then vaulted to Drogon's neck. You hold the isle, I will hold the sky. Drogon launched, wind storming across ramparts. Jon watched silhouette diminish, then strode back inside. Maester, send ravens to Vale watchtowers and the Three Sisters. Order beacon fires. Night fell. Over the shivering sea, moon shone frost white. 3 Tyroshi cruisers tacked hard toward Sisters Pass, wind snapping banners that bore no sigil but glimmer of starstone sewn into sails, catching lunar glow. Below deck, rowers pushed rhythm. Atop each deck, crates of meteor shards formed antler arcs, primed for slingshot. Rhaena and Nyssa tracked above, cloaked by height. She counted ballista on main deck. 8 per ship, tipped with crystal broadheads. A single volley might shred Nyssa's fragile wings. She kept distance, waiting for Mother. Soon, roar like distant avalanche rolled. Drogon soared out of cloud, wings eclipsing half-moon. Pirates spotted silhouette, chaos erupting. One ship swung ballista. Arquebus belched. Drogon dipped wing, flames erupting, controlled stream shearing through projectile then licking across deck to ignite shard crates. Green explosion erupted, but Drogon had already veered. Firestorm devoured cruiser in seconds, glass boiling to slag. Second vessel strove to turn broadside. Nyssa harried from aft, nipping rigging. Sailcloth collapsed, mast toppled. Rhaegal thundered down, claws raking weapon deck. Soldiers scattered. Firepots hurled but mistimed, detonating powder stores. Plume of black smoke spiral twisted into stars. Third cruiser steered for shallow shoals, hoping rocky tide would deter dragons. Yet Drogon overtook, landing upon deck, with earth-quaking impact. Men leapt overboard. Daenerys, perched astride spikes, leapt to forecastle where Captain knelt trembling. Her gaze burned hotter than the torches swaying overhead. "Whose gold?" she demanded. The captain sobbed. Velvet mask, no name. Lipless Lorathian accent. Paid in black pearls. Daenerys' throat tightened. Loreth imported pearls from Abyssus Fisher. Only one guild minted black-lipped trade stones. The Remnant Society, rumored front of Iron Bank Black Chamber. She bound prisoner, signaled Rhaena to shepherd survivors to rescue skiff. Flames claimed wreck. Green glowed then vanished beneath churning surf, leaving sea silent save crackle of cooling cinders. Back at Dragonstone, Dawn blossomed. Daenerys met Aemon and Rhaena in council. Jon sat with Tyrion, Varys' scrolls arrayed. "So Iron Bank skirts open war," Tyrion muttered, funding cutouts to strike symbolic blows. But pirates failed, chain broken again. We sent envoy pressing claim of sanction for armed aggression. Daenerys shook head. "We craft alternative. Invite Sea Lord and Bank's secret ledger keepers to Winterfell during First Harvest Festival. Let them witness abundance that flows when coin fosters seed, not steel." Jon raised brow. "Diplomatic risk. Diplomacy is risk." She returned. "But risk measured by dragons perched overhead will breed caution." Rhaena added, "And we reveal Tyroshi plot publicly, naming only faceless broker, letting Bank see we know. They will retreat behind silence rather than own failure." "Oh, Dane." Aemon's eyes glinted with pride. "Let swords sleep and purses speak." He drew parchment. "But if they mouth threats again, we answer with truth. We have no debt to fear." Council nodded. Weeks later, Festival of Golden Marigolds unfolded across Winterfell's green. Sea Lord's envoy walked ramparts, marveling at soldiers forging plowshares from war spoils. Bank's stoic representatives found themselves enchanted by open markets, where free folk bartered seal pelts and glass artisans sold sculptures of dragons coiling around wheat sheaves. Youths rode ponies under watchful wolves, and in skies above, 3 dragons soared slow arcs, releasing showers of golden petals, grown in glasshouses warmed by their own brood's heat. Spectacle of wealth not minted in coin, but coaxed from soil. At feast's pinnacle, Maester Samwell rose to recount Starstone redeemed as fertilizer that reclaimed plague fields in the Reach. Oz thundered. Bank scribes scribbled. Daenerys and Jon toasted to memory of first gift. Drogon to Jon. Aemon raised cup beside them. Rhaena played reed flute. Grey Worm and Missandeia's grown daughter danced with Dothraki cousins. Sea Lord draped new charter upon table. Mutual defense, trade corridors, formal forgiveness of all outstanding fire debts. He bowed to Queen and King and their heirs, eyes wide at dragons perched along wall like living statues. Years rolled into tranquil cadence. Aemon wed Lysara manderly beneath weirwood and beech willow. Rhaena traveled east, forging alliances with Jogos and trading dragon-warmed silks for memory plums. Ghost passed eventually under stars, Jon carving memorial stone beside Winterfell's pool. Drogon slowed but remained immense sentinel. Nissa's brood spread across Westeros, their riders chosen from every land, forging new order. Wardens of Dawn, a corps sworn to peace, their flight cloaks patchwork of region colors. One quiet evening at the Red Keep, aged though reinforced by craft, Jon sat with Daenerys on balcony overlooking river. Lamps glowed warm. Aemon and Lysara's children chased each other in garden below. River breeze carried fragrance of lilac. Daenerys leaned head on Jon's shoulder. "Remember the night on Dragonstone when I offered Drogon as bridal gift?" she whispered. Jon laughed softly. "I remember heart pounding, and the smell of smoke and sea in my lungs." "Sometimes I think my life began again right then." "It did," she murmured. "Ours did. 2 heads upon 1 crown." Then Chaos. They watched stars blossom, each twinkle gentle echo of once threatening comet now burned to memory. Dragon silhouettes passed across moon, wings beating measured lullaby. Jon entwined fingers with hers. Their rings, wolf and dragon intertwined, gleamed. "Do you fear tomorrow?" she asked. He squeezed. "I fear forgetting to savor today." They fell silent, breaths mingling. Below, laughter rose. Somewhere distant, a smith hammered last nail into plow. Somewhere else, a sailor hummed of calm seas guided by dragon shadow overhead. Hope, fragile and constant, floated on night's cool, perfumed breath. And over all of Westeros, the 2-headed dragon endured, not merely as sigil or sovereignty, but as living testament to a covenant older than bone. that fire and ice need not war, that love may temper power, and that dawn will always rise for those who dare guard its horizons together.